Good evening. Welcome to our council meeting on the night of Tuesday, August 21. For those keeping score at home, it's day 99 for this mayor. So tomorrow's 100 days, and I'm planning to show up tomorrow. So thanks for being here. We're going to begin our meeting this evening by reading the roll. Clerk, please read the roll.
Council members Erickson.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzert. Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Staley.
Here.
Brekke.
Here.
As is tradition with our meetings, we start them with an invocation and pledge allegiance, and honored tonight to have Pastor Jeff Backer from downtown First Lutheran Church. And so, Pastor Jeff, thanks for being here. I'd ask that you rise for that invocation and then stay standing for the pledge of allegiance immediately following.
The Lord be with you. Almighty God, we give you thanks for the blessings that you provide to us. As you have promised, we receive our good and daily bread through your goodness, for those that confess you as God and even for those who do not. You have established government for the protection and provision to all people, and we thank you for those that have been called into service and leadership for the sake of the people of Sioux Falls and those that visit this great community. We would ask that you would grant all are charged with leadership wisdom, patience, and your guidance. There are certainly challenges that exist in our community, and we would ask for your continued guidance and steadfast provision. Diversity is part of your amazing creation. Help us to navigate cultures, processes, and systems that would cause hardship to others. We would pray especially for those that have come before this council tonight to lay their concerns and their joys into public consideration. As this council takes up their work, help us to know that this all comes by your will and purpose. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. And I would ask, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor
Yes,
Steele.
I'd like to pull number 6, the Technology Ever Bridge contract.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I'd
Councilor
also
Starr.
like to pull item number 9 for planning and development, the USD Research Park.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Okay.
I'll move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion approved by Councilor Erickson, seconded by Councilor Kiley. Roll call vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Brekke.
Yes.
All right, that is passed 7-0. Now on to our regular agenda for the evening.
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Selberg. Motion approved by Councilor Erickson and seconded by Councilor Selberg.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councilor
I'd like to
Erickson.
make a motion to amend the agenda by moving item 53 before item 23.
Okay. Second. Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Erickson to move item 53 right before item 23, seconded by Councilor Selberg. Can we have a vote on that amendment, please?
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Brekke.
Yes.
Okay, that has passed 7-0. Other discussion on our regular agenda? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
We had the motion, Mayor.
We
can
have
do
the
that.
motion. Okay, so on the amended motion then, I need a roll call vote then to approve that agenda.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Brekke.
Yes.
Okay, that is passed 7-0. All right, we will now move on to the public input portion of our agenda for the evening. As a reminder, public input portion will not last more than 30 minutes. And because public input for all of our regular agenda items will be taken, you're asked to limit your general public input to topics that don't appear later on in the agenda. So for this portion and regular agenda items, speakers are limited to no more than 3 minutes unless additional time is granted. So at this time, I'd like to welcome anyone forward who has public input comments, and for the record, note the time is 7:05. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Heather Pastor. I am a person of the community, human being. Well, I want to first start out by showing a couple images, and I want to let you guys know this is images of what my old landlord, Mark Samuel Graham, did to me after he attacked me. I had to go to Sanford for 4 days where they had to drain all kinds of fluid out of me due to assault. This is part of what I've been going through. Try to hurry this up in 3 minutes. Let's see this going. Well, let me just get on with it. I have been working against the fight against discrimination because my abilities have been getting held against me. And I am working with some of the people from the city. They're being great with me with getting some information. I'm getting closer to getting my police reports against Mark Samuel Graham for the assaults that he did to me. Right now I'm having an issue with Sanford. This blows my mind away. I've had everything from the gastrobicely bypass, hysterectomy, if I said that correct. I had my tubes burnt. I've had to go back when I had to get that fluid drained out of me. And now, because of this woman had called me up and she wanted to have a meeting with me. I thought she was supposed to be an advocate to prevent from certain things being accused of things that I wasn't doing. I received a note on August 9th from Sanford Health. Basically, they're accusing me of being a threat to them and saying that I was calling their staff members and threatening them. They said in this note, I can go to the next appointments I have set up through the falls, but they said after that, they said I'm terminated from Sanford. See, this is the type of thing that I'm just getting really tired of. You know, the thing that I'm working towards is not just about a civil matter, but one of the things that I hope to do in the future is to help other individuals that's going through the same type of discrimination that I'm going through, being slandered, being ridiculed, being chased out of buildings, being accused of doing things you're not doing, being left with bruises, being put in the hospital. I mean, I've even gone to jail overnight for being accused of something I didn't do. After I brought my proof to my public defender the next day, I got out. And I brought my documents, and the charge that they accused me of was dropped and dismissed. Now, I'm one person. My mother's deceased. My mother got killed in this state from a nursing home. She was in the wrong hand of the wrong people. She was scared. My fiance is all that I have. I've even been ridiculed and slandered through Department of Labor. So now I'm still continuing the fight against discrimination. No human being, no matter what race, what culture, where you come from, whether you got abilities or not, nobody should be discriminated against. Nobody. Because when you think about it, that could be anybody. That could be somebody's kid. That could be somebody's relatives. That's kind of where I'm going at with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you being here.
Yep.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening. 3 things: an opinion, a fact, and a little act of transparency. I have mentioned in the past that I have an opinion that our former mayor issued a decision that kneecapped an effort by the state, the county, and a bunch of other people to try to get a double-walled pipe across the aquifer. And that, I think, was a travesty for the people of Minnehaha County, city of Sioux Falls, and the state of South Dakota. That's my opinion, and if you can read the history on that, because it was well covered. But a fact. This is a quart of water, 2 pints. 1 quart of water will pollute or foul 250,000 gallons of water. 1 quart of water, 250,000 gallons of water. How much is that? If each of you used 1,000 gallons of water a month, it would take you 20 years to go through 200,000 gallons of water. Aquifer protection is pretty good. I drink water, I don't drink oil. And then a little piece of history. There was a thing that happened with a release of ammonia in the Sioux River years ago. Judge Pearsall rendered a decision. The first part of the fine that was assessed went to EPA. But $1 million was given to the city of Sioux Falls as a custodial effort, and the city, was to use that in a project that was to benefit the Sioux River, downriver from John Morrell and Company, and it was to be agreed upon and worked with Minnehaha County, Lincoln County, and Rock County, Iowa. Never heard of the report that took place, and I would request that the report on where that $1 million happened to go, I would like to know, because it has never been broached in any way, shape, or form, and it wasn't while I was on the county, and I haven't heard of anything since. I drink water. I don't drink oil. 1 quart of water is good. 1 quart of oil, 250,000 gallons of water that is contaminated. You can imagine what it was like down here at Dune when those rail cars went over. How much pollution did that go into the river and eventually down the Sioux River and eventually to the Missouri? Remember, we drink water, we don't drink oil. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else tonight? If not, we'll move on. Tim, welcome.
Tim Stenga. I appreciate the city council members that have come around my neighborhood. I think that I've sort of enlightened them on how houses are being taken care of, on drug houses that walk out of the house, and pretty much it's just like going to Burger King, because that's just the way they run around the neighborhood. We've turned it into police. Police won't do nothing to the house because these people are just users. That's what bothers me. You know, I guess if we got a lot of users, maybe we should try to get the users to maybe drown out the people that are selling the drugs. I got 2 properties in town, 632 and 630 on North Wayland. The city has to do something about these properties. And I don't know what to do. It's been turned in. We got people living in the backyard. He does work underneath a tent, and he's got crap laying all over. Something has to be done with them properties. People can't walk around the neighborhood anymore because you don't trust the people that are walking up on the sidewalks. So I'd appreciate it if any of the city council people that haven't went around my neighborhood, give me a call. I'll take you around the neighborhood. I'll show you how that neighborhood is run down. Anytime. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Sarah Broussard, Sioux Falls. I want to thank the council members who do the ride-along. Each district should have been on the ride-along. We have some slumlords that are selling the property September the 1st in some of these districts here. I'm working very closely with trap houses, with landlords to evict the people and get that property up to standards. I talked to the Multi-Housing Association today. They're going to try to go to Pier, try to get a felony statute done with renters because renters are damaging up rental properties and nothing is being done. One homeowner, landlord, had to spend $25,000 out of his pocket for damages, and nothing got done about it. So I called Sioux Falls Housing also because most of these tenants are Sioux Falls House low-income people that typically tear up people's property here. The trap house that is across the street from Come and Go, I'm working with the Hurgens to evict those people and get his property up to par. At the same time, the police department, I'm trying to be professional here, has to come on board here, and I shouldn't have to get called from my house because they have to come in between a citizen and police officer because the police officer don't know how to handle calls. Also, at the Come and Go right there, we had an issue with Come and Go with the manager saying that the police did not want to come to the calls because they were trying to come into 10 and 15 calls a day. I called the sergeant went and talked to Come and Go, and I had told Come and Go right there across from the police station to keep calling the police. The crime here is really bad. The police department has been good so far, but give it a couple months. I just had one incident today with a high crime neighborhood and had to complain about an officer because of his conduct. It takes a lot to do problem solving in neighborhoods. It takes the police, it takes the landlord, it takes everybody in the neighborhood to come up with something to get the crime down. I'm going to still tackle on to landlords that are slumlords, get them with code violations, get them with health department, everything, because if they don't want to sit there and correct these issues, there's more crime that's going to occur on these rental properties. I don't encourage people to sell their properties and then they will be out of the taxes they have to pay for the city and blah this and blah say that. But we got to get something done with these tenants and we got to get something with these landlords that want to put criminals and tear up the property and do drugs on street corners. We got to handle these issues, guys. Each council member needs to do a ride along in their district because it's in every district. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. Good evening.
Good evening. This is just in case I need it. I'm going to be brief because I'm talking about an agenda item.
Can you state your name, ma'am, for the record?
I'm Bridget Myers, and I'm here to talk about the process of granting rezoning in areas in Sioux Falls before knowing full details of a project. After speaking with a few city officials, it sounds like when you guys rezone land, it goes in front of planning and zoning. But they basically just connect the dots to make sure that it meets A, B, and C, but they don't really listen to the testimony of the citizens. They just pass it out to you guys for you to hear testimony and for you guys to have all of the issues and everything come here to be voted on. I guess my concern is it seems backwards, like maybe the issues and things should be done in subcommittee before it comes out to you guys. Instead of bringing all of that here to you, it would give us a chance to work through some of the stuff and maybe come with a compromise to the council instead of coming with, people upset and the concerns that you're going to hear later tonight concerning our issue on the agenda. So I was just wondering if there's any way you could look at maybe changing that process in the future with your planning and zoning. And we were notified to come testify. A bunch of us showed up to testify for this particular hearing, but we were told it was going to pass no matter what we said. So I just have some concerns about that maybe we could use our subcommittees better and save you guys time here at council. So when we come here, we have a compromise and everything's ready to roll. I will talk later. Thanks.
Thank you for your input. All right, anyone else? If not, then we'll move on to the pulled item that was pulled from our consent agenda, the provide mass notification software to send text notifications master service agreement. Councilor Staley.
Yes.
You asked to pull that.
I think someone was going to be here to speak on that, to explain what that was.
Sure. Regan, welcome.
Thank you. Regan Smith, Emergency Management.
Yes, so tell us what this is about.
Sure. What the Everbridge system is, it's an emergency notification system that the city is interested in. What it will do is it'll allow the city departments all across the city to communicate to residents, primarily for emergency purposes, but also customer service purposes. It'll allow us to, a resident will be able to sign up for the service via smartphone. They can opt in on the website, check off items or issues that they're interested in across the city, or they can opt in by a text keyword. And once we have all this data in place, we'll be able to push information out to residents via text, email. It also has a reverse 911 system, so we can, in cases of extreme emergency or disaster, we can push voice messages out to all the landlines in the city. We can also, we already have a certificate from the federal government for the integrated public warning system, but through this vendor, we can also text all wireless phones in the city in case there was, again, an extreme emergency such as a tornado, wanted to evacuate a neighborhood, things like that. Also push information to broadcast, television, radio, and the weather radio. And then it also has some other features such as internal notification for city teams, whether they're police, fire, public works, that we can use to mobilize those teams when they're off duty.
So my understanding is this is going to take the place of our current snow removal
that is correct.
To alert people. And then we're also going to be doing hooking up with that for a mosquito
Yes,
spraying?
there's going to be numerous uses for this, but
Like what other uses that we could just tell the people?
snow alerts is going to be our primary thing that we want to get going this fall, but mosquito control, obviously, we can use.
Would we be using it if there was a water main break?
Correct. Water main breaks, sewer backups.
How about road are we using it for road construction?
Road construction, travel advisories. I anticipate for the bigger construction projects, we'll be able to have the residents opt in, like next year for the big 26th Street project, they'll be able to opt in specifically for that and get weekly or however often we want to get. Police and fire will definitely use it for emergency information. We're just kind of scratching the surface on the things that we can use it for. Public health alerts. We anticipate Sioux Area Metro can use it for their customers if they're going to cancel service for weather reasons. Public parking can use it. Parks and Rec can use it for all of their different programs. People can opt in and get information about where they're at. Same way with library and on and on.
Well, and I have to say that this issue came up, a citizen, and let me tell all of you here, this is an example of public input gone good. Because a citizen had a concern about the mosquito issue, about being sprayed without being notified. Because some people don't want that stuff coming on them or their dogs. And she came to public input at my encouragement and brought it up. And then she wrote a letter to the editor. And then KSFY got a hold of it. And then the mayor responded. And this is how our government should be working, but we need to hear from the people. And there is a powerful thing when we're up here speaking in front of the whole body. And also everything you say here is being broadcast to the public. It's an accountability factor. So that's why I am so passionately committed to our public input time here. So I want to say thank you to the mayor for doing this. I think it's a great thing that we're going to be bringing to our citizens. I do have a question, just so people know, we're approving a contract of $22,000 prorated first year. So, and then 2 year, what does that mean? 2 years dash 5, 44,000. We're going to spend 44,000 a year to do this?
That is correct.
And what are we currently spending to alert people about snow alerts?
Our current system it's pretty minimal. It's 4 cents a text, but honestly, that system was not reliable towards the end of this last year. It was not getting those texts out in a timely manner. Basically, that vendor wasn't created to generate that many texts and put them out. It wasn't a robust.
Well, so if it's prorated, when are you proposing we start this?
We are going to enact this. We hope to enact this on October 1st and announce the sign up on October 15 in time for snow season.
Okay, and the last thing, I guess, I'm hearing a lot of people, they're wondering about how they report potholes. And you probably aren't going to be texting them that there is a pothole. I mean, you said you had that reverse 911 thing. It'd be nice if there was like a reverse pothole reporting.
There is a system in there. We'll be talking to Public Works about whether they want to utilize it, whether it makes sense, where it is a two-way system where residents can report.
Oh, people would love that. I think they'd think that was a good value. Okay, thank you, Reagan.
All right. Any other questions?
Councilor Erickson.
Not a question, but a statement of thank you for your leadership on this. I know this is something that you've worked on for many years.
Yeah, we've been looking at this for several years. It was a budgetary issue. The technology has really improved the last 3 or 4 years, and it just with what was happening with the snow system. Some events we've had over the last few months where we have had to evacuate neighborhoods, we just need this tool as a community our size.
And it is a great tool with many different facets that can be done. You can opt in or opt out as much as you want. The list is really nearly endless. And so thank you again for your leadership. I appreciate you really getting this to the finish line. It's been a long time coming. So thank you for that, Reagan.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Starr, yeah.
Yes, more of a point of information. Do we take public input on this because it is an agenda item?
We will.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for Regan? If not, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this?
I'm Bruce Danielson.
Bruce.
I've got about 35 years in data security. And one of my concerns in this type of program is, and it's being exploited all over the country, and you're seeing it in all of the hackings that are going on, is the personal data that's being collected here. We'll have names, addresses, phone numbers. People will be able to steal the information out of this system. I want to know what provisions are in here to make sure that all this personal data isn't able to be sold. According to the Digital Act of 1985, I believe, any data that's stored on a system for more than 6 months, it becomes commercially available to the rest of the world. That anybody can buy it. Law enforcement can buy it. Your information from Domino's can be sold to give people all kinds of information about your pizza buying habits. I want to make sure that when you adopt this, that we have a system that this data cannot be sold to anyone, cannot be used for anything else. I have been working in this field for a long time. I've had to do a lot of personal data preservation after people have been robbed of their information. We've had to go and clean up their lives. I see so many holes in this system. I think it's a good system, but I appreciate what technology can do, but I also am seeing that this is a step in a really bad direction if you vote to do this tonight without looking into this situation. I want to make sure that our personal data is safe. I appreciate the work that Regan is doing, but this is something that I'm passionate about for 35 years. Thank you.
And Bruce, the General Data Protection Regulation of 2018, which was just passed, replaced that 95 statute. So it's, if you go to the
1985 information is still out there. There are a great many layers in this battle.
Sure.
And when I was deeply involved in data security back in the 1980s when it first passed, they were only trying to protect fax machines. And fax machines could only keep so many telephone numbers for a certain period of time. So they were looking at, oh, that should be good enough. We had mainframes that ran the space program that were less powerful than our smartphones. So we didn't have those concerns back then. They've never corrected those laws. Those federal laws have never been updated in that area. And I know that you've been working in the data world for a long time. But the core data security laws that we have to do electronic data have not been updated to solve this problem. Thank you.
Appreciate your concern on that. Councilor Staley.
So maybe Regan can answer this, but.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, are we still in public comment? Or what do we?
We still are on public comment. Yeah. Is there any further public comment on this issue? All right. Discussion amongst the council.
Reagan, yeah, I just want to know what safeguards do we have in place? Because I think that...
Yeah, we did, our IT department was obviously very involved, and this contract will rest in that revolving fund with them. So we did ask for those, IT looked at where that was at. There are provisions in the contract as far as where that data rests if we do leave this vendor, the data that we collect. And then, but the vendor does bring data to the table already with those landline phones that are already out there. So they bring that to us. We collect, those cell phone numbers, things like that, and that belongs to the city of Sioux Falls.
But are we guaranteed that's never sold to another entity?
Yes, that's part of the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion amongst council on this?
I'll move to approve.
Motion approved, Councilor Erickson, seconded by Councilor Selberg. Roll call vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That item passes 7-0. I'll now turn the meeting over to Council Chair Erickson for the next item.
Item 9 first.
Oh, we have item...
One other pulled.
Oh, we had the other pulled item. I apologize. Yeah, next item, item 9.
Item 9 is the USD Research Park Incorporated Agreement for Professional Services in the amount of $150,000.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr.
Starr.
Mayor. Yes. The reason I pulled this is I just wanted to point out the good work that's done at the USD Research Park and the partnership that we've had as a city with our state and our Board of Regents, and approving this contract tonight is something I'm very proud of and something that I think we've all on this council worked very hard to include in what we do, and I just wanted to take that extra minute tonight to do that. One of the things we talked about this afternoon in our budget hearings, we spent some time talking about affordable housing and how do we make housing available for more people. And it comes down to wages and jobs. And that was the first thing that our staff told us when we said, what could we do to make housing more affordable? And it's income, and it's teaching people and getting people good quality jobs. This is one step where government and the private and the school and the whole group can come together. One of the first tenants in our new research park is going to be SAB Biotherapeutics, who just had a news story in the last week how they are, in animals at least, in cows, they've found a solution for Ebola. And they had a 100% effective rate in their clinical trials. And they're starting to look towards doing it with human trials are the next step in their research project. And that happened right here in Sioux Falls, and it's something that our city's going to be part of, and we're going to be proud to have this research park for many generations to come. So I would move to approve this contract.
Thanks for your input on that, and thanks for your leadership on this project, too. A motion by Councilor Starr to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Brekke. Any further discussion on that?
Do we need public input?
Is there public input on this topic? If not, I'd ask for a roll call vote to approve this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
All right, that is passed 7-0. And now I will turn the meeting over to Council Chair Erickson.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 53.
Item 53, a motion to provide advice and consent for the appointment of Stacy Koistra as City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I asked Christine to chair this item because I wanted to address Stacy and his nomination for our new city attorney. I'm going to put him on the spot and make him stand up. He brought his beautiful wife and 2 of his kids. So if there's one thing that I have been very deliberate about in the first 99 days, it's building a real solid team. And Stacy is a heck of a leader, a heck of an attorney, brings a fantastic reputation within the bar. He's a JAG out at the Guard, and brings a lot of integrity to our office, which is already full of integrity, Danny. And so, great leader. And I'm very proud to bring forth this nomination tonight for Stacy as our city attorney. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. And Stacy, thanks for answering this call to serve. It means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, any questions or comments from council? Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would just add that in my time to speak with Stacy a time or two, I don't think there's any question that he's got the background and the temperament and the experience to do a great job for this city. And the kicker of it is he's got a heart for service that shows throughout his career. So I think he's going to be a tremendous addition to Sioux Falls and have a terrific career. So I think it was a good choice, and welcome. I guess I shouldn't be ahead of that, but I hope welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council? Councilor Staley.
Well, I had an opportunity to visit with Stacy for 2 hours last week, and I told the mayor I was going to drill him like I was drilling a Chief Justice nominee. And as we were speaking, and I laid my cards out on the table because in the last 12 years I've dealt with 3 different city attorneys. And as a citizen, there have been times when a city attorney has had an energy that has tried to suppress and subdue our efforts as citizens. I've led 2 petition drives, so I've tasted that side of it. And as a city councilor, I've also tasted the side of a representational unbalance. And so was very concerned that we get someone in this position that is going to be watching out for our interests as council members, watching out for the interests of the citizens, and watching out for the mayor's interests. And I believe that this man is going to be able to pull that off. He expressed to me that he's going to be doing due diligence to represent us as councilors and the mayor. We talked in our 2-hour little discussion about faith. We talked about integrity in our lives. We talked about the need for transparency. We talked about life crises. I'm 60, he's 58. We talked about what we've been through and how life wears you down, makes you smarter, it makes you gutsier. And that we talked about at this point in our lives, we're kind of at the point where we're going to do the best thing we want to do, not worry about what people are going to think. So I have great respect for that. We talked about communication. And we both agreed that, we're going to be up front with each other. He'll be up front with us, I believe. But personally, I said, hey, Stacy, don't ever mistake my assertiveness and my confrontational style with a lack of caring and concern, because I do care. But I'm also, for the people, I think we are called to be guardians. We're not called to hold his hand. We're called to stand up for what's right for the people, all of us. So I'm very excited. And I was going to ask him to come forward and just say a few words to us, please. I warned him that I was going to do this.
Welcome, Stacy. For the record, just state your name so we have that again. I think we know who you are, but welcome.
Stacy Koistra. I'm a nominee for the City Attorney Sioux Falls. I appreciate your comments and yours as well. And I'm excited to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity and the appointment by Mayor Haken. What an exciting time and an exciting city. And the opportunity to meet all of you this past week was great. I appreciated your time and you're willing to be honest and upfront about your concerns and your passions. And I hope to bring that to the city. I mean, to consider the honor and privilege of representing one city, about 185,000 people. What an opportunity, and I consider it unique, and I appreciate the opportunity to blend my military service with my civilian service, and I look forward to working with all of you, getting to know you better professionally and personally, so thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Councilor Brekke.
I too grilled Stacy. I don't know if it was 2 hours or an hour and a half. I'm a little briefer than Teresa. As a former city attorney myself for 18 years, I felt that I had something to offer him and some questions that I wanted to ask. I am very pleased with the appointment. I'm excited about Stacy. I'm particularly excited about his JAG experience. I think that is a good background, for city attorney work, because there's a black and whiteness, about working in litigation in that kind of an area, and sometimes that's what we need in city government. We need someone who's willing to stand on principles and to stand strong on those. The other thing I talked to Stacy about was the tri-cornered hat of the city attorney. He is the counselor for the counselors, individually and collectively. Individually, we're entitled to have a private relationship with him on council matters, and collectively, we're entitled to have a private relationship with him. He's also the city attorney for the mayor and the mayor's staff. And he's the city attorney for you, the public, in matters of open meeting laws, in matters of enforcement of the charter, and in matters of enforcement of the Constitution of the United States. He is your attorney for that. He can't represent you individually, but he does have that role. And I talked to him about the slippery slope that can cause sometimes when you're serving in that position. But if you have solid principles that you're operating on, you can really do it quite easily, because it will become black and white for you. And I wish that for him, and I also pledge to him, any support or anything that I can do to be of help, I would certainly make myself available to him for that. And I do plan on doing that. And if there's anything I can do to make it easier for you. The other thing I told him, and I had actually already talked to the mayor's office about this, is I think it's extremely important that the city attorney's office reinstitute its membership with the International Municipal Lawyers Association, and that Stacy be allowed the opportunity to become very active in that organization. That actually is an organization that has city attorneys from all of the major cities in the country, in the United States, Canada, and Germany. And the similarities, even between small and large cities, are just amazing. But, navigating that tri-cornered hat, is really helpful when you have friends that you're connected with around the country. And I hope that he will be active in that organization. So I welcome you aboard, and I guess I also told him, and I would say this to all my fellow council members, I'm looking forward to, an active relationship with our city attorney. And I would encourage all of my council members that same thing. I think it's really important that we ask him to attend most of our meetings, that we ask him to attend, private things when we're working on particular ordinances, so that we get the best legal advice when we're passing policy or when we're passing law, that we get some background and some research into everything we do, and that our relationship with him be personal and not always with just the staff. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I heartily support your nomination, and it was a pleasure talking to you and meeting you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve by Kylie, second by Sale. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That motion has passed 7-0. Welcome.
This would have been real awkward otherwise, so glad. Next item, please.
Item 23, new 2018-2019 retail malt beverage license for Rudy M. Navarrette's Tex-Mex Food, Rudy M. Navarrette's Tex-Mex Food, 2209 West 57th Street, with the conditional use permit 8899-2018, being reviewed on August 8, 2018, pending final inspection per health. New 2018 retail wine license for Rudy M. Navarrette's Tex-Mex Food, Rudy M. Navarrette's Tex-Mex Food, 2209 West 57th Street, with the conditional use permit 8899-2018, being reviewed on August 8, 2018, pending final inspection per health. New 2018-19 retail malt beverage license for Wine Time on Main, LLC, Wine Time on Main, 330 South Main Avenue, CUP not required, pending final inspection per fire and building services. Item 26, transfer of 2018 packaged liquor license from Lewis Drugs Incorporated, Lewis Drug, 2701 South Minnesota Avenue, to Lewis Drug number 15, 2525 South Ellis Road, with the conditional use permit 7728-2017 being approved on December 6, 2017. Item 27, transfer of 2018 retail liquor license with video lottery terminals from D&K Enterprises, LLC, Big Sports Bar and Billiards, 3100, 3108, 3110 West 12th Street, to M&K Enterprises, LLC, Big Sports Bar, 3110 West 12th Street. Item 28, transfer of 2018-19 retail malt beverage license with video lottery terminals from Asmina Halilovic, M&S Sports Coffee Bar, 2309 West Madison Street, to Dorinda Martinez, business name to be determined, 2309 West Madison Street, with conditional use permit 8110-2018 being approved on March 7, 2018. New 2018 retail wine license for Dorinda Martinez, business name to be determined, 2309 West Madison Street, with conditional use permit 8110-2018 being approved on March 7, 2018. Item 30, new 2018 full-service restaurant on-sale liquor license for WR Hospitality, LLC, 2210 Kitchen and Cocktails, 2210 West 69th Street, CUP not required, pending permit issuance and final inspections per building services and health. Item 31, new 2019 full-service restaurant on-sale liquor license for 212 Restaurant Group, LLC, Rome Kitchen and Bar, 4521 West Empire Place, CUP not required, pending permit issuance and final inspections per building services and health. Item 32, special one-day liquor license for Ramcota Companies Incorporated to be operated at Avera Health, 1000 East 23rd Street, for a retirement event on August 30th, 2018. Item 33, special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Senior Citizen Services Incorporated to be operated at Active Generations, 2300 West 46th Street, for special events on September 13th and December 11th, 2018. Item 34, special one-day liquor license for Sioux Falls Sports Authority to be operated at Minnehaha Country Club, course only, 3101 West 22nd Street, for a PGA Tour Champions event to be held September 15th through 24th, 2018. Item 35, special one-day malt beverage license and special one-day wine licenses for Interstate House of Pancakes, Rollin Pin Restaurant to be operated at Camp Leif Erikson, 2301 East 26th Street for a wedding reception on September 15, 2018. Item 36, special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Joe Foss Squadron Commemorative Air Force to be operated at Maverick Air Center, 4201 North Maverick Place for a fundraiser on September 22, 2018. Item 37, special one-day malt beverage license for Siouxland Heritage Museums to be operated at Pettigrew Home and Museum, 131 North Duluth Avenue for History Happy Hour on October 25th, 2018.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, Jamie.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. Items 23 and 24 are your beer and wine license requests for a new restaurant. The applicant is present if you have any questions for him. Items 25 is a request to add beer. This particular applicant had requested wine previously a couple months back, and now they've decided to sell beer as well. Items 26 is a transfer due to a change in location. Item 27 is a transfer request due to a change in LLC, which are change in ownership. Items 28 and 29 are together. The first one is a transfer due to a change in ownership, and then they would also like to add a wine license to their business. Item 30 is items 30 and 31 are both new license requests for the full service on-sale licenses. Both have provided the affidavit stating that they can meet that 60/40 or the intent to meet that 60/40 requirement. At renewal time, they will be required to show proof that they are actually meeting that 60/40 requirement. Items 32 through 37 are all special one-day requests that have met the state law requirements. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on any of these items first? Okay. If not, counselors, any questions for Jamie on any of these items?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second.
Motion to approve, Erickson, seconded by Kylie. Any discussion? If not, a vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
That has passed 7-0. Next item, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by adding Chapter 161 to be entitled Sioux Falls Downtown Rail Yard Environmental Overlay District.
Hey, Dustin.
Dustin Powers with the Planning and Development Services Offices. This is an item that was brought forward to you on July 17th as part of an informational for the downtown rail yard redevelopment, as well as first reading on August 7th. Tonight we're requesting approval for the Sioux Falls Downtown Environmental Overlay District. Quickly, what that entails is that this applies to all the property that was purchased with the rail yard redevelopment funds and was a requirement of the Federal Highway Administration as a result of using those funds to purchase the 10 acres from Burlington Northern Santa Fe. What this provides is ongoing environmental controls to avoid any environmental or human health concerns in the future with any development that occurs within the 10-acre area. It provides that a coordinated review by the City of Sioux Falls as well as the South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. It requires that an environmental engineer must complete a detailed environmental assessment prior to any development occurring on the site. And then in the case of an area where no disturbance of the soil is occurring and there may not be required certification for that or cleanup prior to the development, if any time in the future a new development were to come, so an example would be such as a surface parking lot, if an area of this redevelopment area was to be a surface parking lot, it may not require cleanup at this time, but in the future, if that area were to be redeveloped, a certified engineer would have to review that and it would have to go through this approval process again. So with that, again, this is just an overlay district over the 10 acres that we purchased with the rail yard redevelopment funds to just provide some extra environmental and health criteria and review before any development occurs. With that, we'll answer any questions.
Thanks, Dustin. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? See none. Questions for Dustin on this? Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dustin, what's the due date for the environmental assessment to be completed on that again?
The environmental assessment related to the developments or?
On the soil, I mean, can you go back on the
I just had a point on there. Like to find out if there's substances on there that when you're cleaning the soil, if you find out there is toxic substances, I mean, when that test is done, what's the due date for the results of that?
It would just be subject to, when that review is done by the DNR in the city of Sioux Falls. So, as a project comes forward and submits for a redevelopment of that area, that's when this review process would start.
Okay.
And then they would be doing that testing at that time.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Counselor Staley.
I guess I don't got it. So is this being triggered because of the billion development?
No, this is triggered because of, it's a federal highway requirement because we use federal highway funds to purchase the rail yard redevelopment area.
So let's just say we weren't going to be developing, and we have a plan to develop it, but let's say we didn't, that wasn't moving forward yet, would we?
We would still be approving this overlay district because it's a requirement for the entire 10 acres that we purchase. So the redevelopment that the Black Iron Rail Yard LLC has proposed is only for 4 acres. So when they bring that development, when that development starts, they'll have to have a certified engineer do this study and submit that, and that'll be reviewed at that time. And then the level of contamination will determine what type or if any cleanup was required.
Right, so you said they're going to do it.
Yes.
But I thought this is saying we're going to do it, the overlay, I mean.
No, this is, the city's putting the overlay district in place, and we will review, we'll do a coordinated review of the environmental conditions with the Department of Environment and Natural
So we're
Resources.
going to determine if it's contaminated.
They'll have a certified engineer submit that to us and the DENR.
Right, so we're going to determine that, and then billions are going to determine it too? Or they're going to take our...
The engineer that they bring on to complete the detailed
So we're going to have
environmental
two entities determining that? Right,
No,
we have
the city and the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources will determine the cleanup necessary.
Come forward, please. Thank you.
Jim Wiederick with Woods, Fuller, Schultz, and Smith, representing Black Iron Rail Yard. What happens in this process is that the city puts in place the requirement that any developer that comes in to develop the property will then be required, as they put in footings, as they dig holes, put in foundations, et cetera. When those activities are done, the requirement then is that the test results of the engineers that Black Iron and other developers hire then have to go to the city and to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So the city itself doesn't do any testing, but it does review the results, and then we have to coordinate that with
so
DENR.
it's setting the stage of this is the area that we're going to be monitoring, but we're not doing the digging. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions or discussion on this item? I'd ask for a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion approved by Selberg, seconded by Kiley. Any further discussion? If not, a roll call vote on that motion, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That's passed 7-0. Next item 39, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota declaring certain real property of the city surplus and approving offer to purchase.
Dustin Powers with Planning Development Services again. Tonight we are actually asking for deferral of this item after some discussions with the development group. They have requested that we defer this item until Monday, October 15th. That meeting is on a Monday because of the chamber event, I believe, on the Tuesday. So tonight, Jim Wiederick is here on behalf of Black Iron Rail Yard LLC to discuss any questions you have related to the deferment.
Okay. Thanks, Dustin. Jim, welcome.
Jim Wiederick, once again with Woods, Fuller, Schultz, and Smith, on behalf of Black Iron Development. I didn't expect 2 weeks ago to be here tonight asking for a deferral on this item and the following item, which is the actual approval of the development agreement and the offer to purchase and sell the property. So what has happened in the meantime? A couple of things. The Billions have had an opportunity to have a number of meetings with the potential contractors for this project, and they have had an opportunity to hire Tegra as an owner's representative. Specifically, they're working with Dick Strasberg, who has worked on the city's behalf on a number of projects and continues to do so on behalf of the city and other developers here in town. As a result of those meetings and the ability to start understanding some of the costs of construction, the biggest challenge with this development is the parking. By far, that is the most significant challenge. At first, the proposal was to provide almost all of the parking underground, as was presented to the council at the information meeting and at the first reading. The situation with the underground parking and some of the environmental remediation and the fact that there is a significant amount of bedrock in that area has caused the Billions to reevaluate the design of the project. We are not asking for a deferral because we want to change anything about the purchase agreement. The price, the street that we would put in, the bike trail that would be constructed, the amenities, none of that. But what we're looking at is trying to figure out a way at this point to make the parking work, and we're looking at different alternatives. Some of those alternatives include a structure similar to Washington Square, which has above ground parking within a ramp within the building, looking at some more surface parking, and also looking at perhaps switching phase 1 and phase 2 and just flip-flopping them. So we're asking for this 60 days so that we can have further meetings with Tegra and the architect and the contractors so that we can come back with a final design that we're absolutely sure will work for the Billions as well as for the city of Sioux Falls. There is every intention to enhance the project even more fully than what we've been able to present, which really has been an amazing project to begin with. But we want to be sure, in fairness to the council, that what ends up getting built is what has been approved in the development agreement. So we'd like the opportunity to come back in 60 days, show you what the plan is that we think will work for everyone, and then seek your approval at that time.
Thanks, Jim. Questions for Jim on the council? Councilor Staley.
Well, just so the public understands, I stated that I was amazed at this when you presented it, but so the public understands that this project, which I thought was just incredible, is going to take these two buildings, phase 1 and phase 2, in between. They were going to have a grassy area, and underneath that was going to be a cavern of underground parking, which is a huge undertaking. So I can understand the bedrock would be a concern to you on that. And so I think it's wonderful that you're wanting to do this project, but the question I have is, and this is for our city attorney, if they would decide not to do it, because you still could pull out, right?
No.
I mean, what are the ramifications if you would say, put the brakes on? I don't want that to happen, but I just want to know where, because
the contract has liquidated damages that the Black Iron Rail Yard is not able to pull out once it's submitted the purchase offer to the city. So there are liquidated damages in there to the tune of the down payment, which has already been delivered to the title company.
So you're committed?
They're committed.
But what if you come back in just for the logistics, you come back in 60 days, you want it to be above ground? I mean, can we say to you, well, too bad, we want you to do the cavern thing?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
You're the ones that are approving the design information that we are attaching to the development agreement. And that's why we're here tonight, because we don't want to have to come back and say, well, 60 or 90 days after it's been approved, now we've got different plans. We'd rather you approve it when we know for sure what works.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jim. Councilor Brekke.
Thank you for that explanation. That was very helpful. I wanted to just add to, I kept it to myself, but because the project itself is just so blamed exciting, and the idea of underground parking was, I think, very, very cool. But I have to admit, I did have some concerns about that because, in my years of involvement with city government, we had several issues from time to time on that riverbed, and the outcroppings of that. You can bore holes all over the place, and then you can still miss all this underground bedrock. And I was just worried about the fact that you'd start poking holes, and when you started drilling, there, it'd be there everywhere, all over the place. So it's probably good that you discovered this now, and are maybe going to do another thing, because I have a feeling that was going to mess you up. And so I think that and maybe you'll still end up doing it. I mean, it sounds like that's not off of the table, but. If I did, I'd really have some borings. And again, it depends on how far you go down and all of that. But I just know from history that in that river bank, there's just a lot of outcroppings of bedrock. And so the fact that you're addressing that issue now so that we know what we're voting on, I'm very appreciative of that. And I understand how in design that might have got overlooked. But when they really started thinking about it, they probably started to be more concerned about that.
One of the things that I didn't mention, which is really kind of exciting, is they've been tossing around, now that they have Dick Strasberg on the team, they've been tossing around how to better tie in this project with 8th and Railroad so that it enhances the neighboring properties as well. So there's going to be a cool design coming back.
It'll be well worth the 60 days. Thank you.
Councilor Sale.
This question will be for Danny, City Attorney. How substantial a change are they able to make before we run into the risk of violating the RFQ process, that we don't have somebody else coming back and say, well, that's not what they submitted the first time that you accepted? How substantial a change can they actually make?
Well, that's a great question, Counselor. I couldn't answer it now. Substantial changes depend on case-by-case basis. This property was sold using an RFP process, but state law doesn't require property to be sold pursuant to the RFP process. So depending on what changes they need to make, depending on what they are, they could be substantial enough to where you may want to reopen this up for other people to place bids, but there's no mathematical formula or great definition I could tell you. We just have to see and wait what it is. Well, you could trust us to tell you what we think, and then you as a body can determine whether you think it's substantial or not.
Okay, thank you.
May I respond also?
Yes.
Two items. One is that we're still looking at phase 1 and 2, but perhaps just flip-flopping them. Secondly, the Billions were the only proposal that was received by the city for this particular spot. So there's no competitive proposal that was out there at that time for consideration.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions for Jim or discussion on this item? I'd ask for a motion to defer to the council meeting of Monday, October 15 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Brekke, seconded by Kylie. A vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Next item, please.
Item 40, set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 40. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 5311 West 26th Street from the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District to the CN Conservation District, number 8906-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
Maggie Squire, representing Planning and Development Services. The applicant and owner of this property is the City of Sioux Falls. It's located west of South Marion Road and south of West 26th Street. The size is approximately 2.1 acres. And the purpose of this rezoning is to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is a drainage and utilities site.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this topic? Councilors, any questions for Maggie, who, by the way, is our summer intern, so thank you for being here and presenting this.
Move to set the date to Tuesday, September 4th for second reading.
Second, Selberg.
Motion by Councilor Erickson, seconded by Selberg. Any further discussion? If not, a vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley? Brekke?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Next item, please.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 41. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 5501 East Red Oak Drive from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the CN Conservation District, number 8904-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant and owner of this property is once again the City of Sioux Falls. It's located at 5501 East Red Oak Drive, which is next to Rosa Parks Elementary. The size is 1 acre, and the purpose is to match the correct zoning with the current property use, which is a city-managed detention pond and drainage area.
Thanks, Maggie. Anyone from the public to speak on this issue? Councilors, questions for Maggie? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve and set the date of hearing.
So moved, Erickson.
Second, Sale.
Moved by Councilor Erickson, seconded by Councilor Sale. Can I have a vote on that item, please?
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That's passed 7-0. Next item, 42.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 42. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 2513 South Eisenhower Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the CN Conservation District, number 8905-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant and owner of this property is the City of Sioux Falls. It's located west of Sertoma Avenue and east of South Grinnell Avenue, and then south of West Chesapeake Lane. The size is 21.08 acres, and the purpose is, again, to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is a city-owned detention pond.
Thanks, Maggie. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this topic? Councilors, questions for Maggie on it? Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maggie, are you applying for Mr. Beaver's job then? You've done a great job tonight.
I told him I was going to take it, but he won't let me have it.
There you go. Thank you for your service this summer.
I'd ask for Councilor Brekke.
I just wanted to mention to the public that's in the audience and then at home what we're doing here. These are about 4 of these all in a row, and Maggie's been hired this summer to update our zoning maps, and particularly we need to lay claim in our zoning maps to all of our detention ponds, and so she's had a summer project of doing that. So in case anybody wonders exactly why we're doing this and why it's going through so routinely, I just wanted to offer that explanation. There's one more after this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move to set the date to Tuesday, September 4th for second reading.
Second.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Sale. Can I have a roll call vote on that, please?
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Next item, item 43.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 43. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at southwest corner of West 26th Street and South Elmwood Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the S1 General Institutional District. Petition number 8534-2018 and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0 with the following condition. Principal and accessory uses within the NF1, NF2, UT1, UT2, BCF1, BCF2, BCF3, and RE1 forms be limited to accessory off-site parking.
Jason Bieber representing Planning and Development Services. I got a little bit of a radio voice tonight, so I apologize, so bear with me. The applicant and owner here is Rick DeSanto with Lifescape. This is an application we've obviously seen before. It's come before you. It's been remanded back to the Planning Commission. So I'll quickly go through it. Lifescape is looking at constructing a new parking space. They currently lease roughly 88 spaces from the VA hospital to the north. That lease is up, so they're looking at constructing a roughly 150 parking lot to the west of their current building. So they would net roughly 62 spaces. That would hopefully get some of the traffic off the street on 28th Street and 26th Street. The proposed parking lot would require a level D buffer yard along the west property line. This would include a 45-foot setback, 6-foot berm, and 50 units of landscaping per 100 lineal feet. And the reason why this was remanded back, as Tom said, that we put the condition on there that would limit this use of these properties to parking only. There couldn't be a building constructed at this point. If they wanted to construct a building in the future, they'd have to come back and rezone the property again. So,
Thanks, Jason. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to come and speak on this item? Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, did you want me to give you a little preface here? Janelle,
yes, Councilor Selby.
Janelle had approached me before the meeting today. She's been trying to get us some information as a council, and we've had some technology trouble. So she had a little bit of a concern that she'd have time in 3 minutes to get us everything she needed. And I said, well, I can't speak for the mayor, but I'm sure you'd show her some grace in that regard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
My name's Janelle Kane. I'm 1808 South Lincoln Avenue, and I have also been asked to speak tonight for my neighbor, Mary Ann Hofer, who lives at 1900 South Lincoln Avenue. She had to be out of town on a prior commitment this evening. We are 2 of the 3 property owners on that block of Lincoln, so we have 2 rental houses owned by Lifescape to the north of me, and then 2 rental houses owned by Lifescape on Lincoln Avenue. Well, the 3 of us are in a row, and so on the south end of that double block. We are all very much against the closing of the street of Elmwood and the traffic that goes in just because of the way the property lays. Now, I'm going to give you a visual on this. Okay, so this is how my backyard currently looks from my patio. Now, 80% of these trees back here, they're sucker trees that I'm hunting down the guy that has my $680 and never came back and took them down last year. So I'm going to be able to see much more of that property. Now, 2 weeks ago, Mr. DeSanto came back and we walked around to look at exactly where the berm would be and how it would be. So I have a rental property on this side of me that Lifescape owns, and Mary Ann lives on this side of me. So where my rental property, or my home property, confronts or goes up against, their fence is right here, and this is on the back side. This would be the berm, and it shows that this will be raised 4 feet 6 inches, and you would think that the mark right there would be it. Well, I went back and I went, I know 4 feet 6 inches. However, that's not 4 feet 6 inches. So I looked a little closer in regards to how close it is to the top of the fence. I went, no, that's not 4 feet 6 inches. So I went back with the tape measure. My fence comes right to here, and this is from my side. That exact stake is right there. This is from my side. My fence is 3 feet 8 inches. This is the 4-foot mark on this tape measure. So they're looking to bring this fence, or this berm up to start it 6 inches taller than where this tape measure lies. So people are going to come off that and go boom into my backyard. Okay, so, or I'll be looking at basically a cliff. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. So we go from that stick to the stick at the other end of the house on that lot behind me. It's right here next to the garage. And this is the stick I was talking about originally. So that's about 2/3 of my backyard space up against that. So this particular stick says that they're going to take down this part of the parking lot, or to the parking lot, to do the parking lot 2 feet. So this will be 2 feet lower, and then that's where they're going to put in their 6-foot vinyl fence. So it'll be vinyl, so we cannot see the the car lights come and go. Well, however, when you go back to this, you can already see that we can see the lights and everything across the street, and it's not going to cover anything. If this goes through, I'm going to be able to see the back of the cars on the first row, and so is Marianne, because her house sets up a little higher than mine, as well as all the other cars, and see the buses come and go if that street would be closed. Now, here's what this looks like from that 2-foot stake, looks like from back by the fence. On this picture in my yard, I've drawn this red line. This indicates the last third of my yard here. There's a 6-foot privacy fence that's a wood fence from the prior owner that they're going to take down before it falls down, quite honestly. And so it'll be my fence along there. So from that, at that point where that fence ends, 2/3 the way through my yard, there's a berm stick right there where that fence ends, right here on the back side, and they're going to take that down only 2 feet also. So 2/3 of my yard, over here, we're going to be up 4 feet 6 inches, and over here behind me is going to be down or up two more feet. So it's going to go slant this way, okay? Then we have the middle stick in the yard. This is the separation of that fence between Marianne and I at the south side of my property. And this stick out here, it says they're going to bring that up 2 feet out in the middle. And from that stick, what that stick says right here, it's 35 feet from the curb. How do they put in a legal berm when that's 35 feet to the curb if they're going to put a parking lot in there and we're not going to close Elmwood Avenue that we all will be able to see very clearly and not appreciate, quite honestly. So you kind of got that same stick kind of out there in the middle. So, and that goes down to 2 feet also to where the fence goes. So we have been showing all these wonderful renderings of what the berms will be in the mock-ups. Well, number 3 here is when the landscaping is mature is kind of what we're looking at, only it's going to be on my yard much more steep. It's going to be more like a sledding hill because it goes from 4 feet 6 inches down to -2 feet, and you hit the fence. So I don't know what to do with my 3-foot 8-inch fence that goes all the way along there that's going to be completely exposed to the difference in the height if this berm is put in. I don't like the fact that, well, they were taking 2 more houses out of there today. There's 4 left there. That they took some affordable housing away from us. I think we could do much better if they go back over to the VA and have them attach those 2 parking lots. That would be problem solved on both ends. And I know the community is very much against having the closing of Elmwood Avenue. How many people are here from the neighborhood? So I don't know if anybody else has got as big a mouth as I do, but I'm one of the owners, and I don't want to be drove out, but what's going to happen is if when they get that feasibility study back in November, if they decide to remodel and we don't approve them closing off Elmwood Avenue, my guess is they're going to sell on both ends those other 2 houses and come back to the council for approval to put parking lot all the way around the 3 of us. And then our property value goes down even more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Other public input on this issue. Sir, come forward, please. Welcome.
Mayor, Council. My name is Dave Ottoman, and I live in the neighborhood. And
surprisingly, last night I went out and talked to the neighbors, and I was surprised to find out that about 15, 20 of the people did not know they were trying to close Elmwood. So there is not a big awareness about it, and I'm not sure why. The whole project's been really kind of low-key to begin with, and I found out through a petition that Janelle did way back in the beginning. We had a block party and stuff, and that's how I found out about the possible street closing. My concern is public safety. Well, Elmwood is the only through street from 26th to 41st Street. The only other through street you have to go to Western Avenue or Kiwanis. Well, for fire department, ambulances, first responders, police, they used Elmwood to get into that neck of neighborhood to resolve those or get to the scene as quickly as possible. I'm afraid that by closing Elmwood that the response time might be shorter to get to some of those places, because not a lot of those streets in that neighborhood are not straight through. They're dead ends, cut off a half block to get to another street. So I would appreciate that you guys take that in consideration, and I thank you for your time, and I thank you all for what you do.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Appreciate you being here. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mark Larson. I too am a neighbor in that area. I live across the street from Janelle and down a little ways, so I will not have a parking lot in my backyard, but I'll be, obviously the vision of it will be there. I am going to tell you one positive thing out of this whole thing is that as a neighborhood we've really come together, and I don't think that happens. I've heard a lot of people complaining about their neighborhoods. I got a great neighborhood. Whether we win or lose, whatever that means in this whole thing, the picnics have been great. We hadn't even talked about it at that last picnic, so it was awesome. But I do have a concern, and it's still the traffic. Mr. DeSanto and I, we've talked about it a couple times. Tonight, I live on Lincoln, so I'm one block over. You see at 28th and Lincoln on the corner? It'd be the south or the northeast corner there of Lincoln and West 28th. That's my house. Yep, right there. And I was out. I have my old Suburban for sale, okay? And I have it on the street on Lincoln tonight. And I was out there maybe 20 minutes. I had to move off that street umpteen times. I mean, I bet there were 15 cars, not exaggerating, in the half hour I was out there with this guy, because Elmwood cannot be used right now because of all the construction stuff. So that traffic has already moved to Lincoln tonight, okay? And that is already, the traffic through there is terrible, and it's too fast. I did talk to the city engineer. We have a great dip there that I don't, if he's here, I don't want that eliminated because it stops the traffic. When they did that Q3 thing last year, that became a really big dip right in the corner. I showed you that, but we pick up bumper parts and stuff there, but that's okay. So it's still the traffic. The traffic issue to me is, it's just an issue. We've got a lot of little kids in that neighborhood. I'm an oldster in there in my 60s. We got a lot of younger people moving in, and I'm just not sure how to rectify that, but I don't know. I guess something the city engineer needs to do. I know they did put the counters out there and do some testing, but you got to test it at 5 o'clock and 4 o'clock and not at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So whatever. I do appreciate what you all do, and I wouldn't do this for any money that you would give me. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Hope you sell your Suburban. Other comments on this topic? Okay, if not, councilors, you have questions for Jason on this? Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, what kind of steps have been taken as far as the emergency services issue, which has been the number one thing I've heard back on anyway?
Yeah, excuse me. As Mark had indicated, we did do traffic counts there on Elmwood Avenue for all hours of the day. Traffic engineering's looked at that. They weren't concerned with closing Elmwood Avenue. There shouldn't be an issue with additional traffic on the other streets. I know the applicant has agreed to actually remove the parking on West 28th Street once this parking lot is constructed. They would put up no parking signs on 28th Street, which should help some of the issues in there. I know there's a lot of issues with snow removal and things, so that should help a little bit. But
Other discussion or questions for Jason on this amongst the councilors? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Excuse me, and just to give people a timeline, that actually tonight we're not talking about vacating the street. We're talking about making this into a parking lot, right?
The application in front of you is for the rezoning, and then the second reading for the rezoning, and then after that will be the public hearing for the vacation.
Right, so the hearing is just a one-shot. That's kind of it's not the same thing as an ordinance, or it's just a one-shot deal. So just so they understand, what we're voting on tonight is not this closing of the street.
Okay. Do I have a motion from the council?
I move to set a date for a second reading on Tuesday, September 4th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Sale, seconded by Kiley on this item. Any further discussion? Councilor Sale.
Yes. I've worked on this now for several months and have met with a lot of people, including the Lifescape people and the neighbors. Lifescape is going to lose their parking in the VA. That is inevitable. The VA is taking it back. Those 88 spots need to go someplace. And if it's not in this parking lot, they will be parking on all of the streets in the neighborhood. It will be worse than it is today. There is no perfect solution to something like this. To have Lifescape step up and say, the first meeting, let me back up. The first meeting, that public meeting we attended, it was brought up that the zoning at that time asked for would allow them to put an office building on this place. I think most of us felt that that was unacceptable for the neighborhood. Lifescape then, after conversation, stepped forward and said, how about if we just say parking only? And I think that's the compromise that has kind of been reached here. Now, it's not great for everybody, but it's something that I think as the city council goes forward, it's a kind of compromise we look for in development and different neighborhoods like that. So that's why I made the motion to do that. I plan on voting for it when it comes forward.
Thank you, Councilor Sale. Councilor Staley.
Well, and I certainly appreciate Councilor Sale's efforts to ensure the public that that parking lot that will be put into the area where these houses are being removed from will be nothing more than a parking lot into perpetuity. However, last week when we were talking about this, and I asked the staff member, have you heard anything from the public about closing the street? And he said, I kind of know. I mean, he said to me, really, the Planning Commission might have heard something, but he hadn't gotten any pushback. Then I got phone calls from people who were, thank God, watching the meeting. Thank you out there for watching, okay, paying attention. But people called and said, hey, we're watching, we heard the answer. And so I've been out going door to door, talking to people in the neighborhood. I went out last night, been talking to people, listening to them. So I am not saying for sure how I'm going to vote on this vacation thing. I'm okay with the parking lot, but the other thing, closing a street is a big deal to me. I'm committed to neighborhoods, committed to affordable housing. I like development, but we've gone way too far with some of these hospital developments. We're losing these homes we'll never get back. So I'm not saying for sure how I'll vote. I'm still listening. Just want the public to know that.
Any other discussion amongst the council? If not, I'd ask for a vote on this item, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Brekke.
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Next item, please, item 44.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 44. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 6300 West 41st Street from the S1 General Institutional District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density District, number 8738-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 7-1.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to refer this item back to the Planning Commission to work with staff on finding a greater setback on the north property line and to work on additional buffer yard elements.
Second, Erickson.
Okay, we have a motion for deferment on this by Selberg, seconded by Erickson. Now, with that motion on the floor, public input still is allowed on this item. So is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hi, Jim Huber, 6109 West Oscar House Circle. The neighborhood opposes the rezoning. Based upon that, these three-story apartment buildings would not be incompatible with the current four sides of this neighborhood. On the north and east is single-family residential, which is ranch, split level, and maybe a few multi-level. On directly north of this property would be the church that is selling the land, which maybe at the tallest would be 1.5 stories high. There's a single-story funeral home and a single-story small office building. Directly to the west of this property is the Keene Park access road, and then Keene Park itself, and a little north is the Keene Park facilities, the tennis court, golf course, swimming pool. This is a mature, well-established neighborhood, and you'd be dropping basically disproportionate new development in this neighborhood, which would have a long-lasting negative and detrimental impact to the neighborhood, not just for now, but for generations and decades to come. We would lose our privacy, a loss of our backyards.
Jason, can you assist with the overhead there? Thank you.
This is an actual house that would be directly north of the property. This is taken from a zone or a drone that's 45 feet high and I believe 30 feet back. As you can see, you can see directly into the backyards. This would be from the third story. For the second story and the first story of this building, you can see directly into like our living rooms, bedrooms, and dining rooms. And what we would get in exchange would be this, the neighborhood. This is actually only 30 feet high, and this is taken from 60 feet away. And so the proposed apartment buildings would be 45 feet, so it would be taller and would be closer. And I appreciate your motion to have greater setback. Also, it is calculated because of the slope and topography of the land. In the winter, as currently proposed and designed, we would receive no sunlight on the back of our houses for those that live directly north of this property. Now, we did have a couple of meetings, and one option, I think in your packets that you received, was option C, which would place it closer to the church. There was still a lot of issues with the road and berms, and then part of the leg of that came too close to the houses. So I think the prudent thing is just to not approve the rezoning because it does not fit into the characteristic of this neighborhood. This, like I said, is established, mature neighborhood, and you're putting basically what we would call the monster buildings in here because they would tower, because of the topography and the slope of land, would tower above everything else, especially the residential places in there. I do have handouts if that's allowed, Mr. Mayor. I have 8 of them, so you can get one since Mr. Neitzer is gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not labeled, but we don't have time for that, so I don't know if I can approach or someone can.
We can have.
If you leave those with Jim there, we'll make sure the council gets them. So, right. Jay, thanks for being here and for your input. Appreciate it.
Any questions?
Thank you. Ma'am, come forward, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Judy Donovan. I also live on Oscar House Circle. I'm short. I want to thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to bring concern on the water and drainage issues we have now from this land. A couple pictures, and I've got handouts also now. But my first one is a contour map. This is the contour map of the proposed development. This was brought up by their engineer at the last meeting. They said that the drainage existing now, the top 10% of the land is being drained towards 41st Street, which you can see by the contour here, it's not possible. And I have proof to show it is not draining towards 41st Street. It's additionally draining down further in our area. This is a imagery from 2017, and all of this proposed green space is what will be developed. And this drainage is now going along the north end of the houses there and the east side of the houses down into those houses. And there is a berm among those, but it's not collecting this drainage from this area. One of the other things is a picture just from our rain we had on Sunday, which was 2.5 inches in our area. This shows some of the water coming down on the north side in our yards coming from this land. This doesn't include any of the water that's coming into their detention pond, so-called, that they have now. This is coming from the east alongside of their drainage and from their land into our yards, into our houses. And this happens every time it rains. It doesn't matter the amount of rain that is happening. It's also coming along the east side into the houses, into their yards also. Another picture. This is the existing, you can't see it because it's underwater, storm sewer that the water is supposed to go into. This is an hour and a half after the rain stopped, showing that the storm sewer cannot handle the existing land there is now for any water that drains. This is a huge concern, and this is why all of our houses flood all the time, because the existing city storm sewer cannot handle the existing land and the water coming from that area now. And with the additional construction, it will cause more water drainage to come to this area. We would like to propose something being done and looked into. This is going to be a major upgrade for the city sewer area here to handle this water. This shows water coming through all of our yards over the city storm sewer that can't handle it, and going on to Valley View, which floods the road every time it rains, and down through our yards. Once again, I'd just like to bring up these concerns. The existing storm sewer cannot handle any rain that happens now, and with the existing green space being taken away, we'll add more water and drainage that the existing sewer cannot handle now. So we appreciate any insight and research you can do along this problem also.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks for the visuals as well. Appreciate that.
I also have handouts with all these if anybody would like them too.
You can leave them with Jim and he'll make sure we get them.
Okay.
You bet. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Liz Steiner. I also live on Oscar House Circle. I live a little bit further up, and I live at 6212. My discussion this evening is going to focus on safety. One of the main purposes of the City Council and of any government body is to provide for safety of its citizens. And the project as it is proposed decreases the safety not only for the citizens, but those who will be living in this area. The first thing I'm going to talk about is traffic safety, including in this area are several very inexperienced drivers. High school students park along the whole west side of this drive, of Keene Park Drive. That is designated parking for them, and that is very inexperienced drivers who are going to be faced with some very hazardous areas. The second is pedestrian traffic and pedestrian safety, and the third will be actually the assets of the city and the safety of those assets. The first concern is the adequacy of the existing Keene Park Road. Keene Park Road is an access road. It is not a city street sort of thing. For additional traffic in this proposed development, it's a conservative estimate that it would be 300 additional vehicles driving down this road per day. Discussion with the city engineering department said that the current road does not meet the current standards for the width of the street for emergency vehicles, that it is less than the current standard, therefore causing extreme concern with emergency vehicles. And also with that increased traffic. The width of the existing road would not permit the turning of an emergency vehicle into the proposed entrance without using both lanes of traffic, causing a concern in this area. Secondly, the proposed access to the development is directly across from the only walking area that accesses the Keene Park area. It's the only crosswalk. And as you'll see later, it is directly across, causing concerns for developers, etc., or excuse me, pedestrians, etc. Thirdly, the proposed development would eliminate the parking, or excuse me, the driveway here, causing an additional 100 and some spots to have to access through the currently proposed access point to this development. So as you can see here, with the elimination of that, the entire exit area would be going to this single access point. In addition, as you can see, that access point is almost directly across from the only walking path to the city park. So those are some of the major concerns with the design of the entrance. The second area of concern is for pedestrians. You've kind of showed you a few things there already with that only walkway, but there are numerous children that walk along this parkway. The only park walking path or sidewalk is on the east side of Keene Park Road. So you have children from two very large daycares walking consistently along that Keene Park Road, crossing over the new proposed driveway, and that would cause, in that area, one of the daycares alone has over 100 children that would walk that path to go to the swimming pool, the park, Keene, any access facilities at Keene, also to Oscar House School. So not only during the summertime when there's large daycares going to Keene Park Pool, but also you have children going routinely every day walking across this path to Oscar House School. And also not just children, this is a very heavily used area for people walking just in the park area. With the road being as narrow as it is and this sidewalk being directly next to it, there is no offset whatsoever. This is just a disaster that is waiting to happen to add this amount of additional traffic to this area.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate your input.
My time up?
We're 2 minutes over, but if you,
Okay,
I'll give you one
thank
more
you.
minute if you got some summary
I do
points.
have
You
one
bet.
other item, and that's just to close, and that is that currently the park facility closes at 10 p.m. That park facility closes, everything that is in this development would be part of the area that is closed. That is my concern for the safety of city assets, that it is not as heavily patrolled, etc., after 10 p.m. Okay? Thank you all for your time and wish for your sincere consideration and empathy
Thank
for
you.
our situation.
And I'm sorry I called you Judy. You're Liz. Thank you, Liz. Hi, ma'am. Come forward, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bridget Myers, and I also live on Oscar House Circle. I gotta lower this, sorry. We felt a bit like mushrooms through this whole process. I thought about bringing a picture of all the mushrooms we have in our yard from the drainage problems we have, but I thought I better stay on task. So we've been kept in the dark and given very little information, and this would hold true to how my family and I were treated as members of this church. One of the builders informed me that he has been eyeing this land for over 8 years and has just been waiting for the day when the church would sell the land to him. He also told me he's been working on this project for over a year. I realize the church is in a predicament and they need the money, but this isn't very neighborly how they've gone about presenting it to us, and they didn't bring us into the process till after there was all kinds of other parties involved. We were the last people brought in. The church members were painted a picture of a beautiful high-end retirement center, good, and that good Christian people would live there. It would be a bit of a kumbaya relationship. Both parties would win from this arrangement. However, the single dwelling homes are not part of this relationship going on between the builder and the church. We feel we will not be profiting from this deal, and in turn we will be getting more water problems, losing our sunlight, increasing traffic on our park access road, and losing our property values. We do not profit from this arrangement, and we are on the losing end of this deal. On June 25th, they held an open house and a notification of these plans. The builders told us the city wouldn't let them do a large-scale retirement setup because it was too big. They then changed the plans to a 60-unit building, and the city told them no, it was too big for that area. Then they made the building 48 units, and the city said yes to those plans. So we were presented with one 48-unit building on this evening. However, when we started asking questions where the second building was, they were taken a bit by surprise and replied, well, there are plans for another building of just 24 units. We had been told by another source there was a second building in the plans the whole time, yet we were only shown plans for one building on that night. At the second meeting at the church, we arrived and there were 3 different plans. We were basically told we had to choose one of those 3 plans. We were threatened if we didn't support the rezone that they're going to put the buildings right up against our houses. These plans, again, were different from the first meeting and still didn't address the issues that we had concerns about. We were told by the builders they can give answers to the issues at hand once we get the rezone, and then they will spend the money to find out the other answers to our many questions. At both church meeting open houses, they were told they do not want the buildings up against our homes, and the size is too big for the area. We will lose our sunlight on the south side of our homes. Our homes were built with a southern view, and the windows are on the south side of our homes. We looked at the video from City Planning on July 21, and they indicated in the video that this is proposed as an affordable housing development in the Roosevelt community. This is not what I would consider affordable housing, and that's what the city is in need of right now. In that same video, it's addressed that the city standards for water is set by average rainfall. If you can look in those pictures, we've had more than average rainfall just in the last week. We've had 3 more than average rainfalls. So the city standards are very minimum, and they do not address the issues that we have in our area. So my question to you is, please consider what you would do if this was your backyard. And when you make your decision concerning this project, how would you handle this if this was your backyard? And thank you for your service and time for listening to me today and for what you do for our community.
Thank you, Bridget. Appreciate you being here.
Yep.
Is there anyone else to speak on this item? All right, well, we have a motion on the table for deferment of this and a second. Councilors, discussion.
Well, Mr. Mayor, it seems clear that further discussions are needed on the issue, and hopefully this motion, if it's passed, will give some more time to it, and they can work out some of the, I don't know if tweaks is the right word, there's some things to be done here yet, but that's the idea behind it. Give it some more time, and hopefully the parties can come together a bit, or some adjustments can be made.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Staley.
I believe I received a video from someone with that rate. Can you? Who was that? Who's? Okay, and you know that I thought that was very impressive. It would be wonderful if we could see that video. I'm going to request that when this comes up again, we allow this woman, because you can send us that video ahead of time. We can put it on just so we can see the impact of water coming into your yards and your area. And I will tell you, I've heard from citizens in the past that have had developers come in, they do something, there's this water issue, and we got a guy right now who has been deeply damaged. And the city said, it's like, well, too bad, it's a developer's thing. And so we don't want to be creating any hardships that way for our residents. And unfortunately, sometimes once they get the green light, You say, well, it's okay, we'll talk about it. Guess what? It doesn't always work that way. So again, it's our job here to be guardians to make sure that we protect everybody's interests.
Counselor Erickson.
So, but the video I would like to see. I'd like that shown at the meeting next time we address this.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Erickson.
Thank you. Lance is here, and I would like to ask Lance a question, if I can, please. I know there's been a lot of talk of drainage and water. I used to live in this neck of the woods, not directly on that circle, however, very, very close, and drove. You still drive by there all the time. And, you know, where we were in a different area, but it did run to us. So there's clearly a water issue in this area. I mean, it's very clear. My question to you is, should this development move forward, how can they better the drainage? How can they impact this in a positive way to fix what is, I don't wish water issues upon anyone. They're the worst to deal with. And so if we can fix, we meaning whoever the relationships are with, and help fix some of that drainage, how can that be done?
Good evening, Council. Mayor Lance Weatherly, Principal Drainage Engineer for the City of Sioux Falls. Engineering acknowledges there are some drainage issues in this neighborhood. In late May, early June, prior to public meetings, the proposed project team reached out to engineering for drainage requirements in this area. What we have evaluated is we are going to require the proposed project to exceed the typical standards for development in this area. Generally, a typical standard in something when a development would drain upon another person's land, we would say kind of commensurate with state drainage laws, you can't cause unreasonable harm or injury. You can't make it worse for your neighbor. What we're requiring in this situation is currently right now there's about 14 acres that drain northeasterly. In a major storm, right now today, with existing conditions, if we get the 100-year event, that's equivalent to about 24,000 gallons per minute going toward that corner. So right now today, even if that's the amount of rain. That is the existing conditions that are going toward that area. If that was just a grassed area, you're still going to be a large amount of water going there. There's 20 foot of slope. There's 14 acres going that way. The church was first built in 1978. The neighborhood came approximately 6 years after the fact. This was almost 35 years ago. These were not done, I guess I would say, to our current design standards. There are some issues in that area we're looking at. But what we have required, what we are going to do for drainage requirements is to slow that water down to pre-developed rates, which means prior to 1978 when it was grass or crop. So the preliminary calculations that the project team has presented to us is they're going to provide a detention pond that would be the size of a football field, storing almost 2.5 feet of water to store that down, to reduce that amount of drainage heading toward the neighborhood. And I guess that's in general terms what we've talked about is the preliminary calculations right now. After the rezone, the next step would go to actual more intensive engineering calculations that our office would review and ensure is correct.
Thank you for your very thorough explanation. If I can, Mr. Mayor, continue. I do have a question for Jason, if I can. Thank you, Lance. My question for you, Jason, is remind me what uses are currently allowed right now. So say we don't do anything and the church decides to expand, build, what, partition it off. I don't know what that would look like. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I just want to know what could go there today.
Great question. Obviously, the church could expand. There could be a school. There could be a nursing home. There could be a Sanford building there. Not saying that they would build there. There could actually also be apartment complexes there. They could be 3 stories. The only exception from what they're proposing here and what they would have to do in the current zoning is they would have to have the apartments on the 2nd level. So they'd have to do a parking garage on the 1st level or offices on the 1st level, and then they could do 2 levels of apartments above that.
Without changes,
without changing the zoning. They'd have the same height. They wouldn't be limited to 48 units per building either. They could construct one building of 96 units as long as they can meet setbacks, buffer yards, parking, all that stuff. So, The difference here that they're doing is they're doing underground parking with 3 levels of apartments then above it.
And that's what triggers the change of needing this rezone versus what's already there.
Correct, yep. And we also didn't feel it was a good transition to be able to construct an apartment complex of unlimited size there, the 3 stories, but you could do as many units as you want, so that's where staff did request that we keep it to an RA2 to only allow the 3 stories and 48 units maximum, so.
Okay, I'm just a little taken back at what can be done already versus what's being proposed. So I have more questions, but I'll defer for now. Thank you.
Councilor Staley.
So I'm hearing from people that there were meetings didn't go well, people weren't accepting what was being offered, and so at the end of the day, what I'm wondering, Jason, is, and we're going to defer this thing, and then we're going to have we're pushing it back to say to the residents and the developers, you guys go back to the table and work something out. But at the end of the day, legally, if they work something out, are they really, is the developer, how bound is he going to be to what they work out? Because I think that's part of the problem sometimes, is that it's kind of a word of mouth, kind of a handshake deal, right?
Some of it, but I believe Councilmember Selberg's point with remanding this back to the Planning Commission is for staff to work with the developers in the neighborhood to put certain conditions on this rezoning that would require the developer to meet setbacks, similar to what we did with 85th and Brett, where they were required a 40-foot setback back there. So there would be certain things that would be required for them to do.
But 85th and Brett didn't get kicked back in our day. I think that happened before us.
I think it did.
It did get kicked back. It got denied once, and I'm sorry.
Right, not after we were elected. With us, it passed. They did a petition, protest petition, but that got kicked back beforehand, before we came on. But so, just so these people understand, Planning Commission sets parameters that are solid.
They would put the conditions on the recommendation coming forward to you, or they could put conditions on the recommendation coming forward to you guys.
That would be more palatable to the citizens. And what I heard from citizens, that they were told when they went to the Planning Commission, don't say much because they've already made up their mind.
I don't think that that's true, but.
Well, that is what I heard. I got calls from people being told that the big deal was coming to the council to talk. So the Planning Commission is kind of a done deal, which that in itself is problematic. I've addressed that already with Mike Cooper, but you want people to be heard. You want things to be stabilized so that it's what you hear, what you say is what you mean. You say what you mean what you say. Thank you.
Other discussion on this, Councilor Sale.
I'd like to address the motion to defer. I believe this motion, Councilor Selberg brought forward, to give the developer an opportunity to come up with a better plan that's more palatable to the neighbors and to the council. And if it's not palatable to the council, I believe we will then have the option to put on conditions that we find palatable. So I would like to go ahead and call for the question.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, Councilor Brekke.
Just a few words. I too heard from citizens that they were not received well from the Planning Commission, and that they were told that it was a done deal, and that was troubling to me as well. So I do think it's really important for this body to refer it back to the Planning Commission, to ask them to look at it a little more carefully and see if they can't strike a better balance between the neighborhood's needs and between the needs of the developer before they send it back to us. So I will be voting for this.
Thank you. I'd call for a vote on this item, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Next item, please.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 45. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 2801 North Career Avenue from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the LW Live Work District, number 8804-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant here is Dave Gibbon. The owner is AL Land LLC. It's located west of North Career Avenue and north of West Innovation Street. It's about 1.65 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at combining this 1.65 acres of live work with the existing 4.9 acres of live work and then construct a future office or apartment residential development.
Thanks, Jason. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? If not,
Sorry, move to set the date of second reading to Tuesday, September 4th.
Second.
motion by Erickson, seconded by Kiley. Any discussion on this, council? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Staley? Brekke?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Next item, please.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 46. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 509 North Covell Avenue from the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District, number 8791-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant and owner here is Don Barnett. It's located at 509 North Covell Avenue. It's 0.13 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is we're looking at matching the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is a duplex.
Anyone from the public to speak on this item? If not, I'd ask for a motion.
Move to set the second reading to Tuesday, September 4th.
Second.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Kiley. A roll call vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That item passes 7-0. Next item.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 47. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located at 51 North Healy Lane from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District to the I-1 Light Industrial District, number 8879-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant is David Burwitz. The owner is Del Anderson. It's located at 5100 North Healy Avenue, just west of Cliff and north of East 60th Street. It's about 12.34 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking to construct a future warehouse development on the property.
Thanks, Jason. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Councilors, questions for Jason or discussion?
Move to set the hearing for move to set the second reading for Tuesday, September 4th.
Second.
You sure about that, Councilor?
Sorry.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Sale. Any discussion on that? If not, a vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Next item, please.
Set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. for item 48. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located east of Interstate 29 north of West 12th Street from the C4 Commercial Regional District to the CN Conservation District, number 8892-2018, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0.
The applicant and owner is the City of Sioux Falls. It's located east of I-29 North and north of West 12th Street. The size is around 4.3 acres, and the purpose is to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is for a drainage way and utilities.
Thanks, Maggie. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Okay, if not, council, I'd ask for a motion.
Move approval.
Second, Erickson.
Motion to approve by Selberg, seconded by Erickson. Any discussion on this? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Next item.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I do need to recuse myself for the next few items. I own property located in the area, and so will be recusing myself.
Thank you, Councilor. Item 49.
Item 49, hearing to determine there is no feasible and prudent alternative to the proposal to demolish 1005, 1023, and 1027 South Dakota Avenue and 414 West 19th Street in the Sherman Historic District based upon the consideration of all relevant factors, and that the program includes all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic property resulting from such use.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes, Danny.
I'd like to give a little background of this hearing procedure and tell you where we've come and why we're here and what your responsibilities are as you tackle these next 3 agenda items. State law requires that anytime there's a project involving a historic property that a certain review process be followed before the city can issue a permit. The review process begins with the question, does this project have the potential to damage, destroy, or encroach upon historic property? If the city staff believes that it does, then the project must be reviewed by the Sioux Falls Board of Historic Preservation and ultimately the State Historic Preservation Office, who's also referred to as sometimes as SHPO. In this particular case, the application to demolish 4 properties in Sherman Historic District was determined by staff to have the potential to damage, destroy, or encroach upon historic property. As a result, the application was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Board, which determined the project would have an adverse impact on the historic district. Thereafter, as required by state law, the Historic Preservation Office, by way of submission of a case report prepared by the city, reviewed the same issue. SHPO determined the project would destroy historic property and that feasible and prudent alternatives had not been explored. Because of that determination by SHPO, the city cannot issue a permit to this application until it's made a written determination based upon the consideration of all relevant facts that there's no feasible and prudent alternatives and that the program includes all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic district. The procedure to start the determination as to whether all relevant factors have been considered and to make a written determination starts with a hearing. So you're going to hear from city staff who's going to get up and give a background of the project, of the determinations made. And you'll be able to hear from the applicant, potentially the owner, and then opponents and proponents of this project. During this testimony that you'll receive, you'll be able to ask questions to staff, to the owners, to the applicants, and to the public in general. The applicant has the burden to prove and to show you that there is an absence of feasible and prudent alternatives, and that this application includes all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic property. So the burden is on the applicant. This is a quasi-judicial matter. So what that means is, as you listen to this testimony before you, if you hear information or if you think of information that isn't otherwise presented to you in testimony or hasn't already been posted on SIRE, so information that's not on SIRE or information that you don't hear today, at the end you need to disclose that information to the public, and you need to allow the public an opportunity to respond. And when I say public, I mean the applicant, the owner, opponents, or proponents. That's a quasi-judicial hearing requirement. So at the conclusion of the testimony that you hear, somebody from this body will make a motion to approve agenda item 50. It'll be a second, and you'll allow additional public input on that motion. After there's been public input, this body will have a deliberation among itself and discuss the relevant factors it determines to be true and go back and forth with, have feasible alternatives been considered, have all the things done to minimize the impact, and then at some point, in your discussion, you'll call a roll call vote, and whatever action passes by a simple majority, then you'll proceed to the next motion, which is authorizing the city attorney's office to prepare written findings consistent with your decision. That last motion authorizes our office to go ahead and prepare findings consistent with what you decided. There's no requirement that you decide for this motion. There's no requirement that you decide against. The requirement is that you listen to the testimony, that you can deliberate, that you consider it, and then authorize the city attorney's office to make findings thereafter. So at this time, Diane DeCoyer, who's the liaison for the board, has some information to provide.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, Diane.
Thank you. I'm glad Danny was the one that had to explain all of that.
So good.
As stated, I'm Diane DeCoyer with Planning and Development Services. I am the staff liaison for the Board of Preservation. The applicant in this case, I'm going to back up a little bit here with some of the slides. The applicant is Sam Assam. He is representing Justin Johnson with Johnson Properties, who is the owner of this. The location is The location of this is in the Sherman Historic District. They're on Dakota Avenues between 18th and 19th Street. There are 4 properties that they are requesting to raise those properties. 3 of those are contributing. 1 of them is non-contributing. As you can see, as stated, and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense as we progress through these slides. The hearing is to represent information as reviewed by the City of Sioux Falls Board of Historic Preservation and the State Historic Preservation Office for the demolition of the homes at the previously noted locations. As Danny stated, the hearing is only to determine if the structure should be raised, not whether or not the owner could develop the property for commercial or other residential uses. The city has an agreement with the state for review of the projects that have the potential to encroach upon, damage, or destroy any historic property, including the National or State Register of Historic Places. That includes our 7 historic districts, 2 that are commercial and 5 that are residential, and also for individually listed properties. The Sherman Historic District was established in 2004, and the period of significance is from construction of those homes between 1878 and 1938. The district includes 15 blocks, 196 buildings, 122 which are considered contributing to the district. The remaining are non-contributing, and those are either because of secondary or accessory structures and also due to newer construction. The district has what was determined by the National Park Service to be visually uniform of architectural styles and materials, and the overall historical and architectural integrity is considered quite strong for this area. The applicant came to the board, and as you can see in the outline above, came to the board on May 23rd to request the raising of the structures for potential development. At the May meeting, the board unanimously voted that the raising of the homes would have an adverse effect on the Sherman Historic District. At that time, we have to send that information to the State Historic Preservation Office. They agreed with the decision from the local board, and they requested a case report. We had to reiterate the same information. The board reviewed that again. We got a final determination in mid-July from the State Historic Office again, saying that they concurred with the decision that they would have an adverse effect on the Sherman Historic District. At that point, we notified the applicant and the owner. He could make a decision on how he wanted to go forward with this. Ultimately, the city, the governing body, you guys have that decision to make the decision whether or not to raise those structures. So that's why we're here today. I think this outline covers most everything. The All Saints Neighborhood Association did do a walking tour in August, early August. I think Katrina is here today. She's the president of the All Saints Neighborhood. She led that tour. There was a couple of city councilors involved with that, as well as city staff and other neighbors. It was an informational. We looked at the properties as well as those that commercial properties that are located on Minnesota Avenue that could be involved with this development as well. Originally, the owner said that it was for a possible commercial development for the entire block. It may or may not happen. We've asked them to maybe consider doing some residential development so that with the All Saints Neighborhood and the Sherman Historic District that they wouldn't lose some of those housing units, but they are not as interested in developing for residential as they are for commercial. But we're not looking at it as a rezone. It's only for raising those properties. So I can answer any questions you have. We do have the applicant here, as well as some members of the board and some of the neighbors as well.
Thanks a lot, Diane. So I think we will hear from the applicant next, but before that, Is there questions for Diane? Councilor Sale.
I have a question. You talked of 4 properties, 3 of them conforming to.
3 of them are contributing, and I can go through those.
You explain contributing to me, please.
Okay, contributing means there is something of significance for each of those individual properties. They're identified that way. The state and the National Park Service concur as to what the integrity of the structure is, whether it's architectural or if it's somebody that lived there that was of some significance. In this case, most of it was because of the architectural significance in this area.
Okay, and what entities did you say come up with that they are contributing?
It's the State Historic Preservation Office, and it is the National Park Service. So those are the federal oversights on it that designate that designate the historic districts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Brekke.
Just a couple of questions for the city attorney. Does the Board of Historic Preservation make factual findings when they have a hearing on this? If so, are those available to us?
The historic board did not make factual findings. I mean, they had a meeting, they took minutes of their meeting, but ultimately there was just a motion to determine that this project would have a adverse impact to the historic district.
So was there testimony taken at the hearing?
Testimony in the way of it was open to the public, proponents and opponents were allowed to speak, and I don't know if, I can't remember if letters were provided or not, but there's definitely testimony in that fashion.
And then one further question. You said that the applicant has the burden. What is the standard of proof? What is the burden that the applicant has to prove?
The burden is just a persuasive burden. It's not set in preponderance or clearly convincing. It's the burden that convinces the council that their decision is based on found discretion.
Sound discretion?
Sound discretion. And based on the evidence presented and not otherwise arbitrary or capricious.
Thank you. Thank you.
And maybe to further answer that, it is a public hearing. There were neighbors in attendance. We do send out letters to adjacent properties as well, in this case, to the neighborhood association, who put that on their website so that people are aware of the hearing as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. I'd like to invite the applicant forward.
Mayor,
at this time.
I would make a motion at this time to waive all time restrictions for the remainder of this hearing on the testimony that's going to be presented.
Yep, absolutely. And I don't believe those actually apply to a hearing, and so that is the intent with the hearing here. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Sam Assam for the property owner, Johnson Properties LLC. This project started with the owner doing nothing wrong. He did his due diligence prior to purchasing this property, went down to the city, talked to planning staff about redevelopment. Of course, he made an assumption because 2 homes on this block had already been torn down. It wasn't until much later, after the closing, that we found out that this property was in the historic district. It's not like up in the Cathedral District where it's well marked, well labeled. You know up there that you're in a historic district. This is not the same. So after that, it was requested from me if we would do some concept plans, preliminary concept plans on our vision for the block. That was done, but I said, I am working, this is confidential. We submitted some concept plans, not final development plans or anything else. We don't have any rock solid takers on this property yet. No tenants, no nothing at this point. Those inadvertently were released, and I believe that's why you're seeing a lot of the controversy that you're seeing tonight. There's been misinformation that's been conveyed about what our intentions are on this property. They're saying that's it, and that's not necessarily it. As I canvassed the neighborhood, or the neighbors that So if you live across the street from me, you're my neighbor. And I went up and down the street and talked with the owners of all the properties, with the exception 1002. There was a duplex there, no one was home. In 1102, and that's on the corner of 19th and Dakota, the southeast corner there. Those folks were not home either. But going up and down the street and halfway down south of 19th, the real neighbors want these things gone. They don't want them there, okay? So those are the people that are being most affected by these dilapidated houses. When my client acquired these, and I want to make that really clear too, he did not let them get into the condition that they are. They were in that condition when he bought them. Again, with the assumption that they would then subsequently be torn down because they are in such poor condition. And I like to apologize to you folks. I'm a newbie to the historical aspects on all this. And so I made some missteps on his behalf. I did not know that prior to the Board of Historic Preservation that I should have had contractor estimates, that I should have had a structural engineering report. So it was after that meeting, when I got the results back from the initial one, that we went and procured those. And you have those in your materials, and you can see that those are soft bids. And not my words, but the contractor. I said, I've not heard the term soft bid. He said, we are making some assumptions, but he said if the structural integrity of these dwelling units are worse than what we have made assumption on, he said this number is going to move and it's not going down, it'll be going up. He also made those bids prior to the structural engineer's report, which showed that the underlying foundations on these homes are not sound. So I think that if you look at the facts, that with the contractor's report that we have and the estimates that we have, you can see that the cost to renovate these structures far exceeds their value. And I guess that's it. I think we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt. No one from the Historical Society or anyone from the neighborhood has asked to get inside the houses ever so they could do their own assessment. These houses are absolutely wrecks, and they've been that way for many years. Again, my client acquired these at the very end of December in 2016, and has he done anything? No, he's boarded them up, and they're an eyesore. And I have a letter here that I can show you folks. This is from one of the neighbors. And I have handouts. I can hand this out to you guys too. He was unfortunately not able to be here this evening. But he is the person that's directly across the street on Dakota. And again, the general consensus there is those folks want these things gone. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sam. Councilors, you have questions for Sam. Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. Mr. Assam, the structural analysis and the bids for renovation, you said those were not done prior to presenting to the Board of Historic, or the hearing with the Board of Historic Preservation?
That is correct.
Is it not possible to, and this might be a question for our city attorney, is it not possible to go back to the Board of Preservation at this point in time with that additional information? Would that be the more prudent way to approach this versus it coming to us and not to them for that ruling as to whether or not feasible and prudent alternatives were explored?
Procedurally, if that was going to happen, I believe the applicant would have to withdraw his application, start essentially all over again with his application, and bring that information to the board and make the same request with additional information. The board makes a recommendation. When they make a recommendation of an adverse impact, then it goes to the state. And what the state does is they make a recommendation. Ultimately, the city council has to make the determination. So what's more prudent, what isn't, that's not for me to decide. There might be advantages and disadvantages for the applicant, starting over with more information and a more favorable opinion, but that's not for me to decide, and that's my legal opinion.
Sure. Yeah, I think I can shed some light on that.
Yes, thank you.
At the meeting of the Historic Board of Preservation, one of the board members actually told me that in a situation where there's going to be a raising of a structure, he said there will never be a case where it's not going to have an adverse impact on the neighborhood. So there will never be a case, is what he said. And I said, what am I doing here then? Why am I wasting my time, your time? So that was the answer that I received from one of the board members from, who was sitting.
Well, I can definitely see why individuals living across the street from these vacant properties would have concern about their present condition. I guess I'd also like assurances that everything that possibly has been done or explored has been done and then rejected, at the appropriate by the appropriate boards. And I'm not convinced yet that that's something that I would want to do here as a counselor, based on the decisions that have already been rendered by the Board of Historic Preservation and our State Historic Preservation Board, is withdrawing your application and resubmitting it and then going through this process now that you have all that information been considered and rejected by?
No, we have not considered it, nor was it offered. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Staley.
Well, so let's say, City Attorney Brown, that we would vote this down tonight. Then can he go back and try again?
You can. Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to also add that if you, let's just say you withdrew your application and went back to the Historic Board, if they made a determination that they didn't think would have an adverse impact, it would still go to SHPO to be reviewed by them. So even though they didn't think it would have an adverse impact, it would still go through some review process with the state, and the state could require, based on that review, another case report. So just by going back with a new application and getting a favorable decision from the Historic Board doesn't mean you won't end up here however many months down the road, just so we're all clear and on the same page.
Counselor Kiley.
And Mr. Assam, had your client, or had the structures in question been on the market prior to your client purchasing them?
Yes.
They had been. Can you tell me how long they were on the market?
At my age, you're relying on the foggy recesses of my memory, but I think it was over 12 months.
Okay, and there were no offers made or none accepted?
Right, none.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Staley.
Well, and there's also been a question as to what exactly your client purchased at the time. Was it just those properties, or was it the whole block?
No, not the whole block. It involved the
antique store on 18th?
Indeed, yeah. The antique store and the old sandwich shop that was there.
Okay, and then we got Gustav's there is not included.
That is actually owned by my family.
Okay, and then how about there's something else on the other, there's that house. I thought there was another business on the corner. What's next to Gustav's?
To the north?
To the south.
Oh, that's Taco John's. To the south.
Right, I'm going to, yeah. Or maybe the house is on the corner. Yeah, there's a house on the corner. Yeah, maybe it's the Keystone.
Yeah, that's to the north. That's to the north.
Okay.
She said to the south.
So. I was what's south of Gustav's on that block?
It's 19th Street.
They're right on the corner. Okay.
Right on the corner.
And then there's a house the stucco thing is
That
is on the.
That's to the east.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions for Sam?
Yeah, I mean, if the, ultimately what you're desiring me to do is take it back to the Board of Historic Preservation with the information we have now, glad to do that, but again, based upon what he's telling me, it's going to, at least locally, they're going to say it's going to have a negative impact. But indeed, in answering your question, the State Board of Historic Preservation never saw these estimates, never saw the structural engineer's report.
Well,
and they so stated in their report.
Well, and I don't think we're making any determination yet. We still have to hear testimony from the
Correct.
public, too.
Okay.
Okay.
Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So did I understand this correctly? This was decided in one meeting to label this area a historic district?
The previous owner stated that he did not know it had been drawn into the historic district, so no disclosure had been made. And then when the current owner went down to city planning, no disclosure was made when he was doing his due diligence either. So he made it under the assumption that based upon the fact that 2 homes had already been demolished on this block, that the rest of it could be demolished, particularly given the condition of the structures. The one on 19th Street, the chimney, I don't know how many years ago, collapsed, fell in, so moisture and it's been open to the elements for Lord knows how many years, and pretty much the rest of them too are just in deplorable condition.
So how long have these homes in question been labeled historic? As was my, I guess.
Don't know when it even.
Oh, you don't? Okay. It was my understanding, the way I was hearing the story, that they got together, it was a recent meeting, and then we decided it.
The district was established in 2004, so for 14 years. The property at the corner of 18th and Dakota that you see is vacant there, that was actually torn down prior to the district being established, so there was no requirement or review required at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask anyone from the public, thank you, Sam, who wishes to speak on this item to please come forward.
Sierra Research Sioux Falls. I want the people to know that these individuals were drug houses at one time. On all of Dakota, from the first all the way down, we have infested drug houses. Okay? So, to get rid of the problem, why do we have boarded up houses that's been here forever in the day? People squat in them. They use them as drug houses, the users, in these specific rental properties right here. So, since Dakota is such a high priority for crime and drugs, yes, if you want to do drugs, do it by the police station because that's where it's at. I've been on Dakota Avenue and it's filled with drugs. These houses that are boarded up used to be drug houses. So why not take it down, clean up the neighborhood, and get the crime of these drugs out? As of right now, there is 7 drug houses from the 100 block of Dakota all the way up. Again, these boarded up houses that you're seeing were drug houses. If you keep these houses boarded up like this, and these slumlords gonna keep boarding up these houses and let them sit like this, this is where the crime comes in the high areas of the neighborhoods. If it's not occupied and it's not being used, this is only making it accessible for drug users to go in and squat and do their drugs. When we did that right along, there was many of these like this. Many. So if we want to clean up a neighborhood and we want to do what's right for the community, these boarded up houses that used to be drug houses needs to go. I don't care if it needs to be in a historic district or not. There's houses that are drug houses and people say, oh, it's so historic, we need to save them. And when we did the tour, it was infested with drugs and termites in them. Same thing with these houses right here that are boarded up. Why would we want to preserve them and save them, especially on Dakota Avenue when this is a high crime area for drugs? And I'm not saying the drug users, we have dope dealers on these blocks right by this police station. And again, I'm going to say these boarded up houses were dope houses.
Hi, Katrina. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Katrina Lair McKinney. I'm president of the All Saints Neighborhood Association. And we don't want these houses boarded up. We want these houses rehabbed. We want people living in them. Actually, going back quite a ways, the history of this block is that for decades, it was owned by one individual, and he did not maintain his properties. He owned this entire block, and people, including some of our neighbors, actually went to him and asked if they could buy some of these housing properties, these residential properties, and he refused to sell them because he wanted to sell the entire block for commercial redevelopment. So the problem we have here is we have property owners that allow properties to go down in value, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in order for them to be able to demolish them. At least that's the perspective that we have from our neighborhood association, because we've seen it happen in other places. We believe that if these houses are permitted to be demolished, this pattern is only going to continue for not only the core of Sioux Falls, but outwards. The word deplorable has been used to describe the condition of these houses several times. And yeah, it's bad. But that word can also be used to describe the treatment that these houses that are contributing to the historic register, how they have been treated. They've been treated deplorably by the owners of the property. And so we really hope that we're going to set a precedent here. We don't want to hold up the process. We don't want another day to go by of these houses with no one in them, where they're sitting there vacant, boarded up, where nothing is happening. We want something good to happen. But this is the first, this right here tonight is the first step in which, if they're raised, well, what's next? I've had conversations with Mr. Assam where he did say to us that there is commercial development that would probably take up the entire block and would encroach upon Dakota Avenue. So that was said to me by Mr. Assam. We are here tonight as a neighborhood, and there's going to be others talking, because we want to keep what is ours and what is residential. We don't want to lose residential in our neighborhood. We have one chance for this, and if these houses are gone, they're gone. But the question is, then what will happen, and is it going to be detrimental for our neighborhood as a whole, not just for this historic district? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Are there others who would like to speak at the hearing here? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Abby Bischoff. I live in the All Saints neighborhood, and also am on the board of directors. I bought my house in the neighborhood in December of 2014, and I bought my house in the All Saints neighborhood for several specific reasons. The old houses, the character that's there, its location and proximity to downtown, because that's where I work, and I love the progress and the vibrant community that we have downtown, and also because of the neighborhood. I had seen what Katrina and some other people were doing, and it felt like a community that I wanted to be a part of. So the notion that I'm only neighbors with the people that are across the street from me, like, that's not the reality in the All Saints neighborhood. I know so many people around this, and they don't live on 3rd Avenue like I do. They live on Phillips Avenue, and they live on Dakota Avenue, and they live on Main Avenue. And so I think, just kind of to reiterate what Katrina said, I think our biggest concern is once these things are done, we can't get these homes back. And that's why a lot of us choose to live in this neighborhood, is because of the character and because of what's happened there. So I would really just challenge you to think about, what precedence this sets for development moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby.
Hi,
Good
I'm
evening.
Leslie, and I have lived in this neighborhood for 18 years. My first apartment was across the street from the buildings that we're not talking about tonight, on 18th and Spring. And if you remember, some may remember, there was a big white and red cockroach-infested beautiful home that had been turned into 4 separate apartments. And I lived there. There was a bookstore, a used bookstore back there, and it was a brick and mortar building, just, brick building. And somebody bought it with great intentions of doing something, and it is parking lot today. I moved into this neighborhood in the first place because it's diverse, not only in the people and the culture, but also in the class and in the architecture and the development. And it's always been beautiful. And those buildings that sit on the corner of 18th and Minnesota have always been home to me. I think that doing the due diligence would have been to come to the neighborhood first. That's what I think doing the due diligence would have been. We do have great neighbors, and the neighbors that you're going to see tonight do not live next door to me at all. I'm the furthest away from all of them. But I'm very grateful for what they do in this neighborhood and within the community, not only in this neighborhood, but in the surrounding neighborhoods of it. They've done their homework, and I appreciate them very greatly. And I have to go to a Smashing Pumpkins concert, so thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Good
Hi, I'm
evening.
Lauren Forsch. I live at the corner of 17th and Dakota, and I am a success story of a house, actually 2 homes next to me that were drug houses that a wonderful neighbor who's kind of been dubbed the mayor of Main Street, Mr. George Hamilton, took down to the studs and did lots of foundation work and completely rebuilt those homes. And because of it, young people like me and some of my neighbors here have since moved into that corner and occupied that corner that once had a terrible reputation. And if those homes would have been in the All Saints District, would have been allowed to be torn down instead of rehabilitated, I don't think it's fair for us to decide today what the next 130 years of a contributing property could look like. If they get torn down. So thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Good evening.
My name is Rachel Meyerink. I chair the Sioux Falls Board of Historic Preservation. Thank you for reading the letter I sent a few weeks ago. I will not be rereading the letter, but I will highlight a few key points from that letter. Before I begin, I do want to point out one thing. The city of Sioux Falls has done a really good job with some signs in the historic districts. There is a sign that says the Sherman Historic District on the corner of 18th and Dakota. So when evaluating projects that will impact properties in our nationally registered historic districts, the question our board asks ourselves is, will this project have an adverse or a non-adverse effect on the historic district that the project is in? We use the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for these decisions. These are given to us by the Secretary of Interior, and that's what we use to guide our decision-making process. I'm here to outline tonight why the demolition of these houses would have an adverse effect on the Sherman Historic District. The first point is the disruption of the setting. The Sherman Historic District's characteristics are different than most of the other historic districts in Sioux Falls. It does not contain many large grand homes like the Cathedral, McKinnon Park, or All Saints Historic Districts. Its significance to our city's architectural and cultural history lies in the fact that the houses in it represent single and multifamily housing for working class residents built in the early 20th century. Few houses would stand alone as significant, but when they work together to form a neighborhood, historic setting is created. When this setting is disturbed by new, non-conforming, and especially commercial buildings, the historic feel and setting of the neighborhood is eroded, and the neighborhood loses historical significance. For example, of particular note in this area of the district is the Brooks Brothers house, which has been individually listed on the register since 1996 and is a wonderful example of early 20th century multifamily housing. If the houses directly across the street from this building are demolished, the setting of that historic building will be negatively affected as well. The second point is the loss of these individual houses. Each of these houses in this historic district has been carefully surveyed and documented by historic preservation professionals from both our State Preservation Office and by hired historic preservation consultants. 3 of these 4 houses on this block have been determined to be architecturally significant to this historic district. 1005 South Dakota and 414 West 19th Street are 2 of 26 Prairie School designed houses in the district. 1027 South Dakota is classified as one of 8 national folk houses in the district. While the houses in question are not particularly large or grand, architectural significance and beauty can be found in them and have been. They help to tell the story of this neighborhood, and today they could continue to serve as much needed affordable single-family homes. And it takes little effort to imagine how charming and livable they would be if they were rehabilitated. These houses are on the border of the Sherman Historic District and represent 5% of it. The loss of these houses will weaken that border, and it will move that border to the east, making those houses more at risk, and so on. The houses have been abused for a long time. They are in critically bad shape, but they are not a lost cause. They can hold the border of the Sherman Historic District and contribute to its historic residential scene and experience. Their continued existence can serve to protect the rest of the historic districts that lie to the east and to the north and to the south. Our historic districts are a finite resource. They will only become more historically and architecturally significant as the years progress. When we enjoy our historic buildings of downtown or take in the historic scenes of our National Register neighborhoods, we feel a sense of gratitude that 1, these buildings were ever built, and 2, to our forefathers for letting them continue to stand. It is my hope that the people of Sioux Falls 20 years, 50 years, and a century from now look back on the leaders of today with the same sense of gratitude for saving these places and these neighborhoods for the future enjoyment and benefit of us all. Thank you.
Rachel, thanks. Thanks for serving on the board as well.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask
yes,
Rachel
Councilor
a question?
Kiley.
Rachel, you had stated that the buildings are not a lost cause. Can you tell me how that was determined?
That would be my opinion based on my actual personal experience and my rehabbing houses myself. I've also am friends and associates with people that have taken houses that are in similarly deplorable conditions that need to be jacked up and put new foundations on, that need to be completely gutted, that are infested with pests, rodents, that need new everything, and they have been rehabilitated and sold for quite a lot and are beautiful and livable places today.
Did members of the board actually tour these properties?
We did not tour the properties inside. Part of the minutes that you'll find for the May 23rd meeting, I believe it was actually myself who asked Mr. Assam if he'd had any inspections and so on done, and he said he did not because he never intended to save these houses. He bought them to tear them down. And so that was asked at that meeting, and that was the response that we received.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Alex Hallback. I'm a lawyer in town here. Own 3 residential projects or residential homes, 2 of which I use as rentals that are actually to the north and to the south of the subject properties. The other is actually on 21st Street. I actually came in front of the Board of Historic Preservation a few years ago because my house was falling apart. I had foundation issues, I had major structural issues. I lifted my home. I made a pretty significant investment into restoring that property, and now it remains a single-family home that I intend to enjoy for the rest of my existence in Sioux Falls. I would like to just respectfully disagree with some of the statements that Mr. Assa made on the record today. The first is that I disagree that this historic district is not visible. I think basic due diligence would have identified this as being not only a historic district, but these also being historic homes. One of those examples was already cited, that there is a historic designation sign in the corner of 18th and Dakota. Also, the property that is across the street, the northernmost property on Dakota, if you go directly across the street, there's a large yellow 2-story home that was built as a duplex, and not only is it it isn't a contributing member, it's actually a listed property. And in front of that listed property is actually a placard that specifically calls that out. So anybody driving up and down Dakota that would look at those dilapidated properties would not help but notice the placards for the historic designation across the street. So I disagree that it's not very visible, that this is a historic district. I also disagree that there are no viable alternatives for this property, because I don't think the current owner has listed these properties for sale. So how can you know that there's no viable option for sale or rehab if these properties have not been listed? I lived in the 709 South Dakota Avenue for a 2-year period while I was rehabbing the home that I own on 21st Street. During that period of time, I drove by these houses, and there were very much tenants and people living in these homes up until I moved out in 2017. So I think it's a bit of a misstatement also to indicate that these properties were purchased and immediately boarded up. They've not been boarded up until December of 2017 at the latest. Prior to that, there were absolutely people living in these properties. So I think it's again a misstatement to say that they're not usable, they're not potentially livable. Now, I will freely admit that I have not been in these properties to look at them myself personally, but the last point, just on the areas that I disagree with Mr. Assam's statements, is that I think you all, or the council members that are here, have been here for a while, probably remember the Touchmark at All Saints conversation that took place in the last 2 years, specifically whether or not Touchmark would be able to expand. I'm sure that those that were here remember the conversation about the impact on the historic district at that point in time. So I find it very difficult to believe that Mr. Johnson was not aware that that district directly across the street, Kinney Corner from All Saints, or from the Touchmark at All Saints, was not in a historic district. More so, I guess, the other thing that I wanted to just say is this body has given certain authority and respect to 42 citizen boards that are populated by over 200 residents of Sioux Falls. And this body gives those citizen boards certain authority and certain I guess, integrity and respect to review decisions or to review proposals, the Board of Historic Preservation being one of those. I was recently appointed to the board. I attended my first meeting here in August. Thank you, Mayor, for that. And I appreciate the fact that this council and this body has given those citizen boards the ability to review decisions and assist the council with vetting projects and proposals, whether that be planning and zoning, all sorts of citizen boards across. And I think you would be doing yourself a huge disservice by trying to reverse a decision made by not only that the Board of Historic Preservation and that citizen board, but also the State Board of Historic Preservation. So I would caution you on the slippery slope that you're potentially creating by reversing a citizen board decision. And I understand that it's the board's role to purely give you a recommendation, that it's not some binding decision. But I think, your agenda stands to get a lot longer if you start to create a situation where a property owner that disagrees with the decision made by one of those lower boards has the ability to bring it to you. You're going to see those decisions coming more and more often. A few years back, Vernite Motor Cars brought a similar proposal to the Board of Historic Preservation to raise and demolish a home that also was on Dakota Avenue. That home at the time they had actually begun demolishing it, had begun removing windows and things like that before I think they realized they had to get a permit to demolish. They then came before the Board of Historic Preservation, and the Board of Historic Preservation said no. And at that point, like I said, the windows were out. They had removed some of the interior walls, the stucco, the plaster, things of that nature. The board said no. It would create an adverse impact on the historic district. Vernite Motor Cars actually, I believe, rehabbed that project rehabbed the home themselves, resold it. Today, it's still a single-family home in that neighborhood, and it was an important asset to the neighborhood at that time. The other thing that I would just say tonight, and then I will sit back down again, is I think others tonight have brought up an interesting point that allowing property owners to allow the properties to degrade to the point that we see these tonight is a huge issue. And it's not only an issue on Dakota Avenue. It's an issue that we see kind of all over the city, more so in the historic districts than we see probably anywhere else, just by the sheer age of these properties. But I think the city needs to give some consideration to how to prevent those properties from getting to the state that these are in today. I slowly watched over a period of 2 years as I drove by these homes with, things starting to run down, and then all of a sudden there were broken windows in it. And it wasn't just a broken window, it was multiple broken windows in multiple properties. Now, I say, what can the city do and what can the Board of Historic Preservation and some of the other code enforcement office and things like that do to what can they do to assist in not allowing these properties to get to the state that they're in today? So I guess in parting, I would ask that you either defer this decision back to the Board of Historic Preservation to take into consideration the additional information that was not present at the time that the board reviewed this the first time, or alternatively that you vote this down this evening and save these properties that I do believe could be rehabbed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening.
Good evening, George Hamilton. I'm looking at the pictures that are being presented here, and I'm listening to the conversations that are being had, and there is a feasible alternative to tearing down these houses. And I am that feasible opportunity. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. I am George Hamilton. My wife is Rebecca Clinton. We are Rebecca Clinton Living Trust. These houses that we have chosen to invest in this neighborhood, I could easily walk before anybody and say, well, I could have tore it down because, look, it was people, There was a dope house. People were living, there were squatters in the house. But we dug in our pockets. I used my hands, and I've rebuilt 7 homes now. And I'm in the process of working on another one right now. Now, Mr. Assam says, we didn't know that was a historic district. I'm just a private citizen. He's a developer. Justin Johnson is a developer. He owns properties and everything. He's an LLC. Every time I go down to City Hall to get a permit for one of these properties in the All Saints Historic District, somebody asks me, well, you better talk to the Board of Historic Preservation because you may not be able to do something. I've been doing this since 2006. That neighborhood was in effect before that. And when was All Saints? How long has that been in effect?
All Saints, I think
in the 90s. Now, the district jogs around, this street, that street moves around, but you can find out which houses are in the historic district, which are contributing, which are protected. Okay, so now, we just had 60, 70-mile flatline winds come through Sioux Falls in our neighborhood. We lost 100-year-old trees all the way over to Cherry Rock Park. The roof didn't fly off those houses. The doors didn't fly through when the wind came through. There's no busted out windows. They're still standing. So when somebody stands and tells me this structure can't be saved, that is wood. That's what you're looking at right there. You're looking at wood. Wood, you can rebuild. So you're telling me that it will cost $220,000 to re-side, to put in new floor joists, to do all this thing? I'd go broke. For the price of money that he's talking about, what his contractors could do that there, I could do every house. The homeowners and people here who work on these houses, like he said, when he bought his house, they didn't spend $1 million to fix up these houses, but they fixed up these houses, the tax assessed value of the house, the appraisal value of the house. I took a house that was a crack house, bought it for $77,000. It's appraised at $200,000. I paid the insurance on it. But I went in there, she said, stripped it down. You can look at the pictures where you can look all the way through the house, replaced everything in the house. So when somebody sits here and tells me, you can't save that there, it's gonna cost too much money, let me get my hands on it. I'll show you what can be saved in here. Because when people buy houses in McKinnon Park, little old bitty houses and stuff, house might be worth $200,000 when they buy it. They come down to the city and get a building permit, $300,000, $400,000 to rebuild a house. You just spent $200,000 for a house because it's in McKinnon Park. You ain't even got a permit for $400,000 or $500,000. Why? Because that's where you want to be, and that's what you feel your investment is worth. And then you move out of that house 2-3 years later, and you sell it, and you get your money out of it. These houses can be saved. This neighborhood can be saved. There's no reason that anybody should stand here and say that these houses need to be torn down, because you can't walk out of this council chamber, go over to one of these houses and push on it and make it fall down. So if you can do that, then you can prove to me that they're structurally, they're deficient and not sound to stand. But until then, all of this here hyperbole about how much it'll cost and whatever and stuff, these houses can be saved. Our neighborhood will put up a fight to save these houses. I've invested my time and money in here. Lauren, Jill's house, the red and yellow house on Dakota, his house, Robin and the Green's house right here. All of these houses at one point in time before we started rehabbing this neighborhood looked like they do. But that don't mean they have to keep looking like they do. If he wanted to fix those houses, just like Vern Ivy, when they decided to fix the house, it wouldn't look like that. But when you don't have a desire to fix the house, it's not his fault, and I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming Joseph. The previous owner purchased the property and was allowed to sit on the property, fought against the board, fought against the citation, said, whatever. Just let the house run down. We got a property maintenance board of appeal. He cited. They talked to people. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? I can just wait. he did not put these properties up for sale. Our neighborhood association contacted this person to buy the property. We even wanted to buy the vacant lot just so we could have a community garden before Longfellow chose. Didn't want to sell it. He sold the whole thing. He didn't own just that little swat you're showing. The casino, the mortgage company, the antique store, he sold the whole thing with the intent to cash out, and when he sold it, that it would be developed commercial. But we standing in the way because I would have bought the houses. There are other people John Cook would have bought the houses. There's several other people. So all of this here stuff, the alternative, I am the alternative. The All Saints Neighborhood Association is the alternative. There are people willing to come forward, put their money where their mouth is, and make these houses the gems that they wanted to be. Because that's what we wanted to do. And we weren't given the opportunity by this private citizen, because he could have sold these houses. If he wanted to sell them, he could have sold them. And if they want to come back and put the money on the table, I'll give them back what they paid for everything, and I'll buy the houses myself.
Good evening.
Like clapping for. So thank you. My name is Laura Rohde, and I sit on the Board of Historic Preservation. And I support the board and the vote of the Board of Historic Preservation that tearing down these homes would have an adverse effect on the Sherman Historic District. Historic homes that make up the historic neighborhoods surrounding downtown, as well as the historic buildings which make up our downtown, are a limited resource that our city and our citizens need to preserve. Like any endangered resource, once they're gone, they're gone. On a personal note, I'm very familiar with these homes. They line the route that I used to walk for exercise when I lived in a small apartment in a historic home on the corner of 17th Street in Maine for 2 years. That was 15 years ago. Downtown wasn't as awesome as it is today, but it was pretty cool then. It's become even better. There are a lot of families who want to live close to downtown. And that's what my husband and I do. Since 2006, we've lived in an 1888 folk Victorian home that's listed on the National Register of Historic Homes in the Cathedral Historic District. In our neighborhood, I've witnessed skilled contractors like George, which would be John Cook, rehabilitate buildings following years of neglect, fires, termites, water damage, people doing drugs, and their efforts have transformed sections within our neighborhood. I'm talking about Spring Avenue. If you haven't driven down Spring Avenue lately, start on 9th Street and drive. You'll be impressed with what's been happening in just the last 5 years. It's amazing. The same can happen here. Please do not allow a developer to tear down these homes and destroy the limited historic resource that belongs to the Sherman Historic District for today and into the future.
Thank you. Is there other people who would like to speak at the hearing on this item? Good evening. How are you?
Robin Green. I am a homeowner, my husband and I, just to the north of where these properties are located. And I don't have a lot to say. I don't have a lot to say. I just wanted to say that, to point out rather that you can see how passionate we are as neighbors about these homes. Neighbors in the neighborhood association, neighbors in the Sherman Historic District, and the people who know this area best, which is us, all have stepped up, or I should say for the most part have stepped up to say that we want to protect these homes and keep them alive and revitalize them. I took a walk around this block today and just dreamed a little bit about what these homes could look like if they were to be restored. And I think that several of us have given you options for alternatives, and I just hope that you consider those options. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this hearing? If not, go. Come on up, ma'am.
My name is Jill. I live on Dakota Avenue.
And I just want to reiterate what's been said so many times tonight, that once these are gone, they're gone. A loss is permanent. And we, as a group, as a neighborhood, would love to see our neighborhood improve and not get worse. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jill. All right, if there's no other input on this at the hearing, clerk, let's read the next item, please.
Item 50, motion authorizing the proposal to demolish homes at 414 West 9th Street, 1005, 1023, and 1027 South Dakota Avenue in the Sherman Historic District, and the issuance of any related permit based on the consideration of all relevant factors, and that there is no feasible and prudent alternative to the proposal, and the program includes all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic property resulting from such use.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Staley.
When are we supposed to disclose? I see it's here that if we had any information, were we supposed to do that at the end of 49? Anything we received outside of the hearing?
Anything that you received outside of the hearing that wasn't mentioned today or not placed on SIRE that's going to...
Yes, I had some things. At what point would I say that?
You should probably say it now and give the audience and public an opportunity to respond.
Okay, sorry, it kind of moved quickly, Pat. So what I want to say is that I was invited to go on a tour, and Councilor Janet Brekke went with me along with some of the citizens from the All Saints neighborhood and some city staff. Diane was there, Matt Tobias, I think was Adam Roach, and Gary Hansen also joined us. And we walked the neighborhood. And at that time, and let me also say that I have the greatest respect for what these neighborhoods are doing. All Saints, Cathedral, Whittier, the way they are, the energy they're putting out, the way they're banding together, they're rehabbing their homes. There's so much pride of ownership happening, and it's just inspirational to me, aside from this issue coming up. So we're invited to go and look at this, and I will say that to me, this is about the historical designation. This whole thing is how we vote, how we handle this, is showing how the respect that we have for that, because that has been established. And I did say to Diane, when we were walking around the neighborhood, I said, well, how does somebody know if they're in the historical district? Because it's almost a little about buyer beware. Because there's nothing that's technically, I guess, told to you, well, you're entering into this kind of a rigid mandate moving forward. And I can understand some neighborhoods don't want to be in that designation. But this one is in that designation. And so maybe we need to do a little more with informing people that this is where you're coming into, but that's the fact of that it is in this place. George Hamilton was also there that day on our walk. I challenge any of us to look at his properties. I was in one of these houses years ago that he had purchased. George might add termite. I mean, it smelled bad. It was pathetic. I went in there and I saw what he was doing with his hands. He was rehabbing this thing, and the Mayor Huther did dub him the mayor of Main Street, because he has gone in here and beautified these homes. And that's a great thing for our community. But they're all within this historical district. So if we're going to come in now and say, well, we'll take this, but then we're going to discard the judgments made by them on this other part of town, I think we're going to be setting ourselves up to have a kind of a decay of the whole system. So I just wanted to say that I was grateful to go on that tour. I'm grateful to see what you're doing, and that's my disclosure.
Thank you. Does any other counselors have anything to disclose on this? Counselor Brekke.
Yes, I was on that tour as well. I also received numerous emails, numerous texts, and voicemails. I've read them all, listened to them all. I didn't really respond to the emails, texts, or voicemails, but I did listen to them all. And I did attend that same walk that Teresa went on. So I was available really to anyone who was interested in this issue, so I would just disclose that.
Thank you. I want to follow the right process here for this item, so I'd first like to ask if any of the counselors have any questions for staff, for Diane specifically on this. And if not, I would like to ask if anyone from the public would like to speak on this. That's how we do it. We had the hearing, but if there's no further public input, I'd like to entertain a motion so that we can, yeah, Mr. Assam, come on up, sir.
I just want to clarify some stuff.
Sure.
George, that was a great speech, but it went directly against what you and I talked about after the Board of Historic Preservations, wherein you agreed that these things...
Could you speak into the microphone,
that
please?
These houses needed to be torn down. George said it at the time, too. So, again, because of the fact that they didn't have the estimates at the time or the structural engineer's report, if this body wishes to either defer this or send it back, we would gladly entertain that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I'd like to ask for a motion so that we can have discussion amongst the council here. Oh, Tim. I'm sorry.
The house that they were talking about that Vern 90 had to refab, I was in that house before Vern 90 bought it because I had a chance to buy it too. At the time, I didn't have the money. If you drive by that house right now, it's 150% different than what it was when I walked in that house. This house was bad on the inside. But once Vern 90 had to fix that house up, this thing is a jewel in that neighborhood. And they got the price out of it that they wanted. But they have probably a great family that moved into this property. But my only question is, if these houses are this bad, is the city doing their job? When I drive around this city, and it's not just these houses, and you see a window that's boarded up, what job is it for the city? Is it the city's job to say, we want that board taken down within 15 or 20 days and to put a window in? Or is it to just keep letting people keep boarding windows up and then they make properties like this look bad? I've been dealing with properties for over 30 years. I've been remodeling houses for over 30 years. First thing I look at is the foundation. When I buy a house, I make sure that foundation is good. Obviously, the person that bought this obviously didn't do his job and didn't know what he was buying to begin with. Well, but then again, he knew what he was buying. But it's the city that let this neighborhood down because this shouldn't happen. This is making us look like St. Louis or even parts of Minneapolis, where you drive by and every house has boarded up windows. Is that what we want as a community? I've been trying to clean my neighborhood up for a long time. I've turned houses in. And where has the city been? The city has let my neighborhood down because I'd look at houses that are boarded up, that have boards on the windows. Why? What is the city's job to make sure that houses are presentable? And looking at some of these houses that we put up here, they are fixable. But I also look at one that looked like there was a fire in it. Somebody collected insurance on that house to be fixed up. Where did that money go? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Danielson. I wasn't actually going to speak on this, but as I listened to the neighbors and I started looking more at what happened to me. I bought a house in 1993 in this town because there were neighbors that created so many hassles for me while I was trying to remodel this house, and I was
getting my permits and I was getting the work done, they would come along and make complaints of all kinds of strange things. And I ended up having about 300 visits from city officials over the next many years. And I used to have a little check thing by my door, and I would mark on it, and I would cross it every time there were 5, and then I'd be doing it again. And over a period of over 20 years, there were one hassle after another, to the point where the previous administration decided that I needed to be arrested and put in jail for 6.5 hours because I became a citizen activist because of the harassment that had been going on in this town. Now, things have kind of calmed down, and I beat the charge that was thrown at me, and Joni Cutler said that we could work on our houses and we could have our houses the way we want. These people out here have a beautiful neighborhood. I go to some friends' houses in this neighborhood. They're amazing houses. I wish I had a house like some of these that are in this neighborhood. I look at these pictures and I could see how they could be fixed up. And why weren't these property owners put in jail? Why weren't these property owners forced to do what I've had to do? Why didn't this city come in and go after these properties? I see this as a double standard all over town. I hear about these things as I travel around Sioux Falls. And this is what makes me mad. And that's what keeps me coming here, because I can't stand seeing what's going on here. These are houses that can be rebuilt. I have been doing all kinds of construction work on the side. Since I was 4 and 5 years old, I've been to construction sites. I haven't seen anything up here yet that can't be rehabbed if you want it rehabbed. And I'm serious about that. These houses need to be saved. That neighborhood needs to be saved, and we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak to this item? If not, I would love to entertain a motion so we can have a discussion amongst the council.
Mr. Mayor, for the sake of discussion, I will make that motion. The motion authorizing a proposal to demolish the homes at the locations indicated in item number 50.
Second, Starr. All right, we have a motion by Councilor Kiley, seconded by Councilor Starr. Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. One of the things that this body has to decide is whether feasible, prudent alternatives have been explored. I do know for a fact that the Board of Historic Preservation recommends that we do not follow through with the demolition. The State Historic Preservation agreed with that. I, as a counselor, hesitate to rule against these boards. And I'm also not convinced that all feasible, prudent alternatives have been explored. And I'm going to be fair to both sides. I'm not certain that the information has truly been presented in a fashion that it needs to be, at least for me personally. So my recommendation would be, and I know that we cannot defer this. We have to rule on this either one way or the other, according to our city attorney, and I'll ask him to verify that at this point.
That's correct. At this point, you need to rule on the motion.
So I'm going to vote against this motion. And I guess I would encourage then the parties involved to withdraw the application as what had been suggested, present the information that needs to be presented, follow the format that should have been followed in the first place, and then we can come to here. But I will say that if we are a year from now, and I guess the other thing that confused me throughout this is whether the properties were ever truly listed and available. It sounds to me like they were listed as a whole, not as individual properties. So that doesn't prove to me, as a counselor in that regard, that all feasible, prudent alternatives were explored, and that they may not be sold if they're truly listed as individual properties. So I guess I'd like to go that route versus making what I would deem a poor decision this evening.
Councilor Sale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a lot of passion in this for the historical society and the neighborhood. I'm going to take Mr. Assam at his word that they did not know this was an historical property. Unfortunately, that is the reality. It might turn out to be a bad investment, which sometimes happens. If I can go all the way back to what our council told us we had to decide, it was the property owner's responsibility to convince us that there is no reasonable alternative. Even if these were $500,000 houses, that does not change the fact that he would have to convince us there's no reasonable alternatives except to tear them down. So that's why I am going to vote along with Councilor Kiley to reject this motion. I do not believe that burden of proof has been met by the property owner. Does he have another avenue? Can he recycle it? Can he do something else? Yes, I believe he probably will at this point. The condition of the houses is not the issue to me. Now, is something going to happen? Is that the issue after we vote this down? If we do that, yes, then we have to do something about the condition of the houses. That's not the question in front of us right now.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with Councilor Sale and Councilor Kiley. I think we're at that point where I don't think tonight we've met that burden to prove that there isn't another alternative to save these locations, and tearing them down at this point I think would be a detriment to our community. I seconded this motion just because we need to have an affirmative motion to pass, and I'll be voting no.
Councilor Staley.
And let me just repeat what I said earlier, that I am just grateful in our community that we have a respect for history. We have a respect for what we've had in the past. And I know we have a lot of new things happening. Development is good, but there's something wonderful about appreciating what we've had, building it up, affirming it. And so I get with my colleagues here, will not be supporting this motion tonight.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. I've been advised by our attorney that the Councilor Kiley abbreviated motion will not fly, so I have to read the entire motion. And I was wondering why I was getting kicked in the knee and it still didn't sink in. But anyway, thank you. So I will make the motion, and I will look for a new second from Councilor Starr, but I make the motion authorizing the proposal to demolish homes at 414 West 19th Street, 1005, 1026, and 1027 South Dakota Avenue in the Sherman Historic District, and the issuance of any related permit based upon the consideration of all relevant factors, and that there is no feasible and prudent alternative to the proposal, and the program includes all possible planning to minimize harm to the historic property resulting from such use.
And second, Starr, that's why I didn't run for clerk.
So we have a motion by Councilor Kiley and seconded by Councilor Starr on that. Is there further discussion amongst the council? Councilor Brekke.
I guess I would just like to weigh in. I'm going to be voting no on the proposed motion as well. I agree that the applicant hasn't met the burden of proof. Also, I was particularly persuaded by, being a historical. I'm a lover of old things anyway, so I was probably an easy sell from the get-go. If there's any way that we can save something old, I would prefer to do that because exactly what the group has said, you can't get it back. And so if I'm going to err, I'm probably going to err on the side of historical preservation. I would also like to show, as a body, I'm hopeful that this council can show its respect for the other boards and the process that's involved here. Clearly those people from the Board of Preservation spoke tonight. They did their homework and did a thorough job. And I think we need to respect the work that they do, in anticipation of, the follow-up job that we have to do and the difficult job that we have to do. But I think any questions that I might have had were really all answered tonight about the possibility that these homes really could be saved and restored. My questions were fully answered on that, and so I will be voting no.
Councilor Selberg.
Yeah, I think it comes down to me where I hesitate also to rule against two bodies that have already made a decision at this point or labeled it. I have not seen an alternative vision. That was kind of my question. I mean, I love that these people are here, and I like and understand the sentiment. I admire the intent. I was kind of looking for, well, is there a different vision? Do we know what it's going to cost? Does somebody have another way to go here? And while I haven't heard it, I don't know necessarily that they've had the opportunity with the way, I guess, that the ownership has had the property. I don't know, but I guess it comes down to me. We have to respect the people that have made rulings to this point. I hesitate to rule against that, so I guess I'm agreeing on, in particular, on that point. So that's my point. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, I would ask for a vote on this item, please.
Council members Kiley?
No.
Selberg?
No.
Sale?
No.
Starr?
No.
Staley?
No.
Brekke?
No.
That item fails 6-0. Next item, please.
Item 51, motion to authorize the Sioux Falls City Attorney's Office to prepare written findings consistent with the majority vote on the above motion for discussion, review, and approval by the City Council.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item? All right. Councilors, I'd look for a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilor Kiley.
I'll try to do it correctly this time.
Sorry.
Motion to authorize the Sioux Falls City Attorney's Office to prepare written findings consistent with the majority vote on the above motion for discussion, review, and approval by the City Council.
Second, Starr.
Okay, motion by Councilor Kiley and seconded by Councilor Starr. Discussion on that, Council? If not, a vote on that, please.
Council members Kiley?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brekke?
Yes.
That item passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Item 52, report of the August 13, 2018 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Is there any new business, councilors? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.